Well, 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 well. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all you out there. This was gonna go. I was gonna go live on Friday at 9 p.m., but I was nursing a bit of a wine hangover, and I'm glad I didn't because Matthew Erickson over at King Pilled, my brother from another podcast, decided to go on an epic 97-hour podcast. It was like 536 hours. It was a long one. It was epic. I went down for a nap at one point and got up, and he was still going. So I'm very glad to give him the Friday airwaves, since I usually don't stream on Fridays. Anyways, I don't usually stream on Saturdays either. But the wife and child are away, so I must doom and gloom about the bond market and perhaps admit. Am I going to admit that I was wrong about something? Oh my goodness. It could happen, folks. Could happen on this stream. It's very rare. Ask my wife. It's never really I say I'm wrong sometimes. Only when I'm really wrong. I feel bad about it. I don't feel bad about this one because I'm not wrong. But anyways, because I made some predictions. And Classic, I made a prediction that's saying on AA that the bond market, international bond market, was going to start collapsing between March and May of this year. I made that prediction back in December. And May has come and gone. We are now in June. And the bond market's still there. And the only regret I had on a show really was that I should have pushed back a bit more when he started to basically frame it as we're all going to be eating beans at the end of May. That's not exactly what I meant. But anyways, when you start using words like collapse, I understand. Nathan Broderick says, news just in, Mironchuck admits he's wrong about everything. No, not about everything. Not about anything, actually. But phrasing. What I could have probably said was you're going to start to see it. And we are starting to see it. So, my predictions, my information, my modeling was not wrong. And we're going to find this out by looking at the Japanese rice market, of all things. Weird, huh? Japanese rice market? What does that mean? I don't know what you're talking about. We're also going to look at Germany. And that's in the news. Funny, right? So you have Japan and Germany, the two pillars, really, of the Marshall Plan. It's come up to 80 years on the Marshall Plan. Soviet Union didn't last 80 years. If you go from the revolution to end, wherever you want to set the end, 91, 92, somewhere around there, just about shy of 80 years. Marshall Plan, we're at 77 years, implemented in 1948, officially. So we're coming up on there. Year 77 this year. In 3 years' time, at the end of Trump's term, we'll be at the 80-year mark. And it's like an 80 years curse. What else was set up in 1948? I don't know. Kind of weird. Just things kind of happening all at the same time. Anyways, so we're going to be talking about Japan, about their rice crisis, of all things. We're going to get into looking at their stock market and bond market and what they're doing to kind of deal with their own massive financial crisis. I'm also going to just do a very brief narrative timeline to show you how fast these things can go. Because as of February of this year, a lot of financial experts were saying Japan's going to have an amazing year, bumper year, most amazing year ever. And then, they continue that analysis right up till April, early May. Things looking great. People bumping money into Japan, to put money away from evil Trump's tariff wars. Ooh. And then by May 31st, you see a massive liquidation, and the prognosis in Japan is not good. And then we're going to take a little break and come back and look at Germany. And Germany's really not looking good. Now, that's something I also talked about in last December. If you go back and get yourself a $2 membership, you can go back in the archives and go find the episode. I think I said the actual title is Germany's Economy is Kaput. And I was looking at the bankruptcy rates back then. And those are finally catching up. So it's going to be interesting to watch that. So we have Japan going through real economic hard times, like serious. Germany looking like it's going about to collapse. Both, by the way, both economic party and both Japan and Germany have released statements along the lines of worse than 2008. I believe in Japan, someone said Japan's looking worse than Greece did in 2008, 2009. I did warn you that austerity is going to be the word of the day. We're already starting to hear that coming out of the UK more and more. So, yeah. So the Marshall Plan is coming to its fruition around the same time, of course. A lot of people in the distant right or connective are starting to peel back and look into that post-World War II, that post-Nuremberg narrative. Everyone's starting to freak out. Don't look at there too much. Why? Why can't we look into it? What's your problem? Yarvin's out there posting about German Holocausts to the Germans. Timing is interesting, isn't it, folks? Well, we're going to get into it. And then we'll see how much time we got left. After that, if we look at Japan and Germany, I got some things to talk about with the U.S. as well. Specifically around Trump and Trump's big giant bill, some white pills to get you at the end. I want to put a big caveat here before I talk to the chat for a second, but I want to put a big caveat here, okay? Because usually whenever I do one of these streams about the economy, people get at me and go, well, what do I do? And I go, I don't know. I'm not a financial expert. I'm a data analysis guy. I look at data, piece it apart, look at narratives, and present it to you in an interesting, fun way with a little baby goat in the corner. That's what I do. I'm not a financial expert. My bank account can show that. Hey, if you want to help out with that bank account, we got a $2,000 USD goal. Well, $2,000 goal could be USD or AUD, whatever it ends up being. We've got $250 on the board at the start of this month. That's an amazing amount. It's already been put forward. Here's a good thing, especially if you're in America. You can send me $5, and it's all good. $5, $10. When you do the translation over here into Australian bucks, it's more. It is more, so that's good. There are bright sides to currency deflation. So send me your money if you like, any way you want. Galactus says, no, Mironchucknow, don't be that guy. Don't tell us the problem without the solution. You got to tell us what to do. Well, as I always say, when people come to me with spiritual issues, I go get a priest. Find yourself a priest and ask him those questions. I can give you what information I have. Same thing with this. Here's the thing. As I've said before, many times before, and I'll say it again, go watch Tom Luongo's work, Alex Craner, Storming Waters over P. Quinones. There's lots of other channels who are handling this information as well, who have a bevy of information, and these people, are deep inside of it all. So a lot of things I look at is just using their analysis tools to figure things out myself. So, I would always direct people over to those experts after you watch this, because one thing I do a little bit better is I take all these things and bring it down to, crayon eating levels, because I need to figure this out too. Trust me, it's every single time I get deep into this, I have to sit there and look up terms. What the heck is FX carry trade? What does that mean? Oh, okay, interesting. I need to figure this out. So this is my service to you. I'm bringing these things into you, and then you do with it what you will. My basic prognosis, again, this is not financial advice, because I'm on public YouTube and stuff. This is not financial advice. If you're in Minecraft, if I were to give any kind of financial advice, if you can get your money out of other currencies and into USD, specifically into, I think it's looking like Bitcoin is now becoming the new parallel to the bond market, to many other things. In Minecraft, just saying, gold market's very nice right now. Bitcoin's looking very shiny. Gold markets, I think, is prohibitive to get into. But if you get your money into those things, if you got outstanding debts in car loans or mortgages or something like that, try to figure that out as fast as you can. because one of the things I think you're going to see very, very quickly now, and we'll cover this in the last half of the show when we get to the American stuff, is the bond yield rates are cruising up to 5%. As we saw in April, they spiked in April because of everyone's blamed Trump's tariffs. These things were always going to happen. This is the adjustment of the market that was going to happen no matter what. Trump, I think, was just taking advantage of the motion of the ocean. So anyways, but that was the narrative. Bond yields spiked up to almost 5%, have dropped down a bit, and now have been nudging their way back up. No one's been talking about this because everyone's talking about Elon and Trump. Some interesting things in that big, beautiful bill, by the way, which we can talk about at the end, which gives me a lot of hope that America's, at least whoever is directing these policies, knows what's going on, if not directly influencing what's going on. So there's reasons for Americans to be very happy. For the rest of us, we're going to find out what they do. Here in Australia, the Labour government is already talking about unrealized gains tax, especially on properties. So they're going to start to get into asset classes to try to shore up a whole bunch of things. One of the big words we're going to talk about a lot is liquidity markets and the movement of money, and how that's really important, especially for the derivatives market, which is another thing we'll get into. I also want to try to get some talk into thick cultures and what thick cultures mean. Thank you to Lindy Man for the terms. Thick and thin cultures, essentially, and how they don't really gel well with Western globalization over time, some more than others. Okay, chat, you're going off, man. Mironchuck has that Tulsi Gabbard hair. I know, I need to get a haircut. Watch this. I'm basically the JD Vance emo meme. My hair hasn't been... Hang on, let me put my hat back on. Rogue from the X-Men. My hair hasn't been that long since like 1993. The Montreal Canadiens were winning the Stanley Cup. Gas was down below $1 per gallon, and Bill and Hillary Clinton was in the White House. My hair was down, shoulder length hair. I was 16 years old. Good God, good Lordy! I just been letting myself go. That's all. My thing is, I don't like leaving the house for much, ever. I go for smokes. I go up to the store, to get some smokes. I get a 6-pack, some smokes. Just that's about all, I don't need much. Go get yourself a hot dog sandwich. Or maybe a donut. There's no Timmy's around here, but do what you can, Moldy Apple says, was this always supposed to be a daytime stream? Yes. Well, like I said, at the start of the show, I was going to do this on Friday evening, but I was nursing a bit of a wine hangover. For those who follow me on X, I popped up on the Raging Tomato after I streamed with Matthew over at Kingpilled. The stream got cut short for some reason. I don't know why. Internet demons. So then after that, I was like, well, what's going on? I was like, oh, debate thing. Cool. We crack open this bottle of wine and get in there. And I got in there. Sure did. Debated a little man-child with really fucked up hair. It's got this poofy thing. Looks like a racer head, but gayer. So, anyways. But watch out for that. I'm going to try to get onto Raging Tomato. I may find someone who wants to fight me. Getting to that point. I'm getting surly in my old age. My irritable bowel syndrome is spreading. So yeah, put me on your paywall if you like. Send me some money over to Stream, either on Streamlabs or PayPal. Is the best way. If you do that, let me know in the chat so I can go check it, and you send me a message over there on PayPal. or Streamlabs, I can read it out. Just descriptions, it's pinned in the chat and description in the thing. And if you listen to this on Spotify or some of that in the future, it'll be in the description as well. Go send me some cash. Keep the lights on and Mrs. Mironchuck happy. We all like that. I know, eh? My hair is... I just washed it too. So it's all like... I got very thick hair. I may not be pretty no more. I might have put on some weight in my old age. Missing a tooth. But I'm not going bald. Not bald at all. That's good. Spud Ruckus in the chat. Hello, Spud. Saying, wow, that after the yen carry trade partially unraveled in August, that anyone was predicting they would have a banner year with that weakness still being propped up. Yeah, well, you know, the funny thing, the carry trade thing is even gotten worse. We're gonna pick that up as well. Steve Ambrose says it's not a bad look. Yeah, you know, I go back and forth with it. You know, funny. I asked my daughter, like, well, should Daddy grow his hair out more? She's like, no. I'm like, why? I don't want you looking like a girl. Like, that's my kid. That's my kid. There she is. So, Moldy Apple says, woof. Wine hangovers. Yeah, I know. Yeah. They're really the worst, you know? Beer hangovers you just kind of feel like, ugh, cruddy, like bloated. Get some bacon in you. Get some bacon in you and bacon and bagels, eh? Just put those bagels in the oven. Turn them up to 520. What? What was I saying? But wine is just, yeah, it's like the headache and the thing, and you feel like a gross Italian man, or maybe Portuguese, depends, I don't know. I feel very sweaty, and I was prepping it. I had everything prepped, and I was everything ready to go, and I'm like looking at the time, and looking at the time, and looking at the time, and Matthew's doing his thing, and I'm looking at the time, like, I don't want to do math right now. I don't want to talk numbers. I don't want to do this. If it's gonna suck, I don't want it to suck because I'm hungover. That's not. I'm a professional podcaster now. This is what I do. I can't be doing this bad like that. So I decided, we'll hold off. We'll do a morning stream, afternoon stream, evening stream for me. We'll keep it going for a while. Let's see. Happy Saturday of Souls. Happy Saturday of Souls to you, Mel. Look at this chat. What a wonderful chat. My Miron Chads are in representing. Let's get some goats up in there too. Mela says wine is the most dehydrating. Yeah. And Steve Ambrose Rutko says, dude, a little too much wine will make you feel like a raisin. Like a California raisin. Well, I heard it from the grapevine. Okay. Don't do that, Jason. Not much longer would you be mine. Oh. All right. You ready? I was contemplating starting with the video, but I feel like, well, we'll get to it. I feel like it's like, you know, movie day in high school, and they bring out the TV on the rack, the VHS. You're like, oh, here we go. What's this going to be? A safety video? What's this going to be about? AIDS. Oh. Okay. Let's start from here. Because we're going to go from here. We'll play this video of Japan's recent rice price crisis. Rice price crisis. And then we're going to take you down a little bit of a windy road. Do I have this set up? Right. I'm missing an article. Maybe not. Anyways, we'll go from May 16th to May 28th to May 31st. In Japan, we'll take a little break, come back for Germany, and then we'll do the America roundup. Okay? So we're going to be walking our ways through the Marshall Plans. Let's see what stockmarket.news has to say. Japan's rice prices just exploded. This is just this past week. This is, I believe, from the 31st or thereabouts. Japan's rice prices just exploded nearly 100%, the biggest spike in almost 50 years. But this isn't just a food story. Behind it is a silent inflation bomb that could rattle global markets and even crash the U.S. bond market. Ooh, where'd you hear that before? Let's break down what's really going on. Japan just posted its highest inflation in years. Core CPI, excluding fresh food, hit 3.5% in April. But beneath that number is a deeper crisis. Rice prices nearly doubled. Energy bills are soaring. Real wages are falling. And the central bank is cornered. Let's talk about rice. In April 2025, rice prices in Japan skyrocketed from 12,000 yen to over 25,000 yen per 60 kilograms, a 98% over year-over-year surge. Now, I've seen a bit of different pricing on this. The highest number I saw was around 65,000 Japanese yen for about that same kind of kilos. Just to give you an idea of where the Japanese yen is right now, currently, as of June 6, was it 2025? It's trading at 0.0069 cents it's 0.0069 to the United States dollar. So well under $1. So 65,000 Japanese yen works out to about 44.85 USD. That's for a 6 kilogram bag of rice. I've seen some of the prices a bit lower. I guess there's a range. So it's basically between $30 USD and $45 USD, somewhere in that vicinity. To give you an idea, the average bag, the consummate bag of rice in America is roughly between five. Let me find it here. The average price of a 5-pound bag of rice in the U.S. can vary based on the type, brand, and location, but generally falls between $5 and $15. So, yeah. Now, the Japanese do like their rice. They're a bit snooty about their rice, but you get the idea. It's quite a bit. And in Japan, rice isn't just food. It's a cultural staple. Keep that in mind when we get to thick cultures. When the rice prices raises, it hits everyone from households to restaurants. Why did rice prices explode? Poor harvests in 2023 due to extreme weather. Rising global grain prices, blame the Ukraine war, and the grain deal that, of course, Ukraine and Russia fell out with because pressure from the EU. Substitution effect, wheat shortages drove people to buy rice. Hoarding by consumers and food companies, and panic over earthquake rumors. A perfect storm. Meanwhile, other food costs are rising too. Eggs, beef, processed meals, but here's what's worse. In April, Japan cut energy subsidies. That means households had to pay full price for electricity and gas. Electricity bills are up 13.5%, and energy overall plus 9.3%. Now, we know that energy prices are your number one reason for higher prices in general. It's one thing that businesses can't alter. Once your energy prices go up, all your associate prices go up as well, inflation or not. So even though the official CPI, Consumer Price Index, says 3.5% raise, actual living costs feel much higher. And here's the real kicker. Wages aren't keeping up. Inflation-adjusted paychecks, aka real wages, have been negative for 23 months straight. People are earning more, but buying less. This is something that's been constant in Japan. I don't know if you guys remember, I can't remember how long ago, but they were talking about it. Japan was in a golden recession. And basically meaning that a lot of people were holding on to money and not spending money. So there was tons of money. Japan was producing lots of money, and everyone had lots and lots of money, but they were just stashing it all. And mostly in cash or mostly in savings and not moving it, not buying anything. They didn't have to. So that was having massive negative effects on the Japanese economy because you just, there's no one investing anything into the local economies. So it's a bit of a problem. What's driving all this? It's not strong growth. This is cost push inflation. When prices raise because supply becomes more expensive, not because people are spending more. It's caused by higher import prices due to the weak yen, global commodity shocks, and supply chains disruptions. And yes, the yen is collapsing. Japan's currency hit a 34-year low against the dollar in 2024. Why? Because the U.S. raised interest rates aggressively to fight its own inflation, while Japan kept rates near zero. That gap pulled investors towards dollars. I have a little contention with that, but we'll continue with this guy's analysis. Let's break that down. Higher interest rates equal stronger currency. Lower interest rates equal weaker currency. Competitively. America classically had very low interest rates and was keeping lower interest rates over the last 30-odd years. I wouldn't consider America's currency weak. I mean, maybe you might say it was weaker than the pound in terms of exchange rates, but it was certainly not a weak currency. So he's simplifying things a little bit here, but I'll add my own little 2 bits as we go. Since the yen is weaker, importing food, oil, and raw materials costs Japan way more. That feeds directly into higher consumer prices at home. The Bank of Japan, BOJ, tried to respond. In 2024, it raised interest rates for the first time since 2007, ending an era of negative interest rates where banks are charged to park money with the central bank. Now rates are at 0.5%, still tiny, but a big shift. Now this is, as Spud Ruckus mentioned, carry trade. That's where this comes in. But Japan is in a bind. Raise rates to cool inflation, you risk slowing an already fragile economy. Do nothing, prices rise, real incomes fall, public pressure grows. This is called a monetary policy trap, and Japan is deep in it. On top of that, Japan is tapering its quantitative easing QE program. QE is when the central bank buys government bonds to keep interest rates low and stimulate the economy. Now, the BOJ is backing off slowly, but if inflation gets worse, they may need to tighten faster. And here's where things get global. Japan is the largest foreign holder of U.S. Treasuries, owning over $1.1 trillion. It's actually now, just recently, there's a report that Japan has now shifted to the number 2 spot, second to now Germany, because it's begun to sell off those treasury bonds. To defend its currency, Japan could start selling U.S. bonds to raise dollars and buy yen, boosting its value. But that comes at a price. Selling U.S. Treasury floods the market. That pushes bond prices down and yields up. What are yields? They're the return investors get on bonds. Higher yields equal more attractive returns, but also higher borrowing costs for everyone else. Governments, businesses, and households. This happened before. Now, again, we just mentioned those yield prices on a 10-year yield, on the 10-year bond yields are just spiking up to almost 5%. 10-year bond yields, and the 10-year bond market is very critical because that's usually where mortgages, car loans, and many other things are tied to, student loans. So as the 10-year bond yields go up, so it makes it harder to borrow money. People who are holding the bonds theoretically get more money. It's a hedge against inflation. But as he's saying here, where she's saying higher yields, more attractive returns, but also higher borrowing costs for everyone else. So your interest rates for those loans will also go up. So in an adjustable mortgage, think 2008 housing crisis, yeah, it's that again. But more global and more in everything. This happened before. In 2013, the Fed hinted it would slow its bond buying. That sparked the taper tantrum, a sudden jump in yields, market volatility, and capital flight from emerging economies. If Japan sells in size, it could be even worse. And they're already doing it. Here's the other thing, too. We mentioned this in Tales of the Shadow Empire. Galactus says, can I fix this by taking a Japanese woman as a second wife? Well, maybe. Hey, couldn't hurt, my friend. Do you like rice? We got some rice. Got a little bit of rice. You go, hey, lady, I got a bowl of rice for you. Look at this rice. Look, it's so white. It shines. Look at this rice. Come on over. Come on over. I got some rice for you. Look at this. You can go sleep in the bags of rice in the back. Don't worry about it. Don't steal none. You don't steal none. That rice is worth more than you. I don't want to be stealing no rice. You call her your rice queen. Accidental racism is the best racism, folks. Didn't plan it. Okay. In May 2024, Japan sold $62.7 billion in U.S. Treasuries, its biggest intervention since 1988, to stop the yen collapse. Japan's finance ministry has made it clear they're ready to use $1.27 trillion in reserves if needed again. No warning, no hesitation. Why does this matter for America? If Japan dumps U.S. debt, it could push Treasury yields higher, raise U.S. borrowing costs, spark volatility in global credit markets, and pressure the Federal Reserve to react. Your mortgage, car loan, and tech stocks all affected. And this isn't just about Japan anymore. It's about how central banks are running out of room, how global debt markets are more connected than ever, and how inflation in one country can trigger financial contagion across the world. Rice is just the canary in the coal mine. So next time you see a chart of Japan's rice prices exploding, don't just think, food's expensive. Think inflation shock, currency crisis, monetary trap, sovereign bond risks, and $1.1 trillion in U.S. debt on the move. Okay. So class, I'm going to bring in the VCR. I'm going to watch a video. This is from Asianometry. Go give them a follow. We'll give them a little like here. A lot of this is more or less confirming what we just read in that report, with a few extra little commentary on the history of the rice market in Japan, which I think is really actually interesting. And kind of tells you, gives you a good example of these things, because oftentimes we're talking about these things. There's a few different narratives we can follow, right? I'm all down with this whole because I do think there was a plan, and I think that plan, as we're seeing with sort of bring globalization back home, reshoring, the original plan was to bring the West to the third world and out to the edges of the world, and when that didn't start working, or when that stopped working, they said let's bring the third world back in, and we'll reshore all these programs and make them work here for cheap. Because we got to keep this thing going, right? It's artificial markets to keep, because there's the really big boogeyman is this: the bond market itself, the international bond market, if you do a casual search, is worth X trillions of dollars. We add up all the different countries and put them all together, so it's trillions of dollars. But then there's a derivative market on top of that. What's a derivative market? Well, the derivative market essentially is it's basically speculation. It's betting on value, right? Bonds, assets, stocks, whatever. Technically, it's how companies or investors, hedge funds will keep liquidity in the market. So they can basically claim it's almost like doing a short-term claim on the value of an asset without actually having to own the asset. So, anyways, that derivatives market, they've been playing that derivatives market on everything. Everything. So there's like the bond market, the international bond market. There's a country's bond market, the international bond market, the derivatives market on top of that, and then you have to also think of all these little corporate bond markets that are operating in a lot of large corporations. So bonds. When you add all that up, that's what I've used the number 4 quadrillion. Let's say just this. Numbers so big, you shouldn't worry about it, because if you do, that's all you'll worry about. It's gargantuan. We don't even really know how big. A very large number. More money than there is money. Put that way. Because these things just compound out, especially as yields go up. And it's like now there's just more and more money. And that money has to be created out of somewhere. And the reason why people tend to invest in bonds is that bonds are secure. Guaranteed, essentially. Because, no matter what, if the government has to, they can just print more money to pay you out. Don't sell in the exchange in the meantime. But whoever the government ends up paying out to, they either have the money on hand, they give it to them, or they have to print it, or they find it from somewhere. Check the couch. But when you start dealing with these kinds of numbers, all it takes is one volatility. And so what I've been tracking, and if anyone's been following the show quite a bit, I made these. So I started following all this information like last August, thereabouts, and I started to put out shows, Stormy Waters, Tom Luongo, and a few others, and started doing my own analysis with it. One of the reasons I haven't been like on the horn about this all the time is I didn't want to turn into one of those channels where I'm constantly going doom, gloom, gloom, oh, it's all going to die. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, tomorrow is going to happen, right? Didn't want to do that. One, I don't think it's helpful. Two, it's really just not helpful. It's a stress. And you look at this too much, and it can just start making you go. Ugh. So I didn't want to stress people out too much because when it happens, it's just gonna start happening. And I think we're actually in the process of it happening. It's just a slow thing. Everyone thinks about when you say a collapse of a crisis. Even the 2008 crisis for a lot of people, some people got hurt real bad. A lot of people, myself included, were like, "What crisis? What? I didn't even notice it." Canada didn't really get hit with it. I was living there at the time. Depending where you were, depending on what your assets were, depending on your finances, it may or may not have hit you. The Great Depression is always the thing that's held up because people jumped from buildings and things, but there was a whole bunch of other things that were going on at the same time. And you also have to remember that the stock market was being used as an asset capture, right? It was basically the derivatives of the day. Right, to help keep liquidity in the market, so they could do short-term loans, short-term cash loans. That was the way to keep the market moving. And when that started to hemorrhage, and there was a whole bunch of little things happened, recession and yada yada yada. I'll do a whole episode of the Great Depression one of these days. Then it starts this cascade. Then there was like a dust bowl thing going on. There was everything happened all at once. So that's what made the Great Depression this Great Depression. We don't live in that time anymore, but we've had mini Great Depressions multiple times since then. 1987 was a big stock market hemorrhage. The dot-com bubble burst was essentially, if you were in the tech industry, that was a Great Depression. That wiped people out. Towards 2008. Now 2000, we can look at the little ones like 2013. COVID, during that period, would have been one of those things, but it got covered up by lockdowns and a whole bunch of other things where they funneled trillions of dollars to offshore banks. And why did it happen? No one, don't even ask that question. What? Who? No. Never. No. It's fine. It's what they do. American banks just funnel trillions of dollars to European ones during a pandemic. Yeah. It's normal. So, we've had these hemorrhages. We've had multiple little hemorrhages before. What makes this one different is that it's tied directly to the bond markets. It's tied to money that's just that derivative markets. If you watch the Big Short, they try to tie it to the housing markets. Certainly, those were involved. Penny stocks, all that kind of stuff, junk bonds. Those were catalysts, but they weren't the main driver of it. They were just one element of. Because the derivative market is really what just occasionally creates adjustments. We saw this in the UK bond market, in the gilt market. They call theirs gilt. In 2018, a slight correction in rates caused a massive uptick. It caused a mini hemorrhage in their retirement funds, and it basically shaved off like £2 trillion from the market. And whoops, had to bail that out real fast. So it's been happening in spots, but unless you were directly in a sector where that hurt you, didn't matter. Didn't feel it. And you know what? If this was only happening in America, or maybe only happening in the UK, or only happening in Japan, or only happening in Germany, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But the fact that it's happening all over the place, we have Liz Truss, former British Prime Minister, who came out a little while ago and said that Britain is in a death spiral. Her words. What's that all about? Of course, A lot of opposition to the big beautiful bill that Trump's trying to pass through, get through as fast as possible. A lot of static from Elon and the rest of it is saying that it's just adding more and more to the debt, and that they're in a debt crisis. That their debt to GDP ratio is, I think, right now at 124%. Japan's double that, by the way. So let's get to this. Play this a little bit. I'll do the stop and play. I'm more or less going to let this play out. It's only 18 minutes. Only. Fans of the show know that I can make 18 minutes to 8 hours content. But I'm going to let this play through quite a bit. And if you have any questions or you want me to stop, let me know in the chat. Of course, send me a super chat. Send me some love over on Streamlabs, over on PayPal. PayPal. Links in the description below. Help us hit that big, giant, juicy goal at the top of the screen. Let me know if you do, and I will check my PayPal and shout you out. So, let's play this.
In May 2025, rice prices in Japan hit 4,233 yen, or about $30 per 5 kilograms, about twice as high as they were a year ago. Prices have gone up for over 15 weeks in a row. In response, the Japanese government released 600,000 tons of rice from its emergency food stockpiles, usually stored for natural disasters like earthquakes. But prices remain high. Supermarkets in Japan are announcing that they will sell rice from other countries like South Korea and even America. Yes, I'm talking about the most blasphemous of rice strains, Calrose. Japan is nearly 100% self-sufficient in rice, and on the surface, that is something to be proud of, but not so much when you consider the system built around achieving that number. In today's video, we return to my favorite carb and dive into Japan's ongoing rice price crisis. The economics of farming certain crops fascinate me. Think about a pineapple. A pineapple takes about 2 years to grow, but once the pineapple plant gets established, it does not need...
I know. This guy's a bit of a snore. Actually, we'll do a Matt Erickson. We'll speed that up a little bit. We're talking about pineapples, motherfucker. But Galactus says about Liz Truss, they also made a laughing stock of her, trying to make sure people didn't listen to her about the internal problems of the UK government. Yeah, comparing her to a cabbage or something like that. Yeah, I saw people doing that, I'm like, what? First of all, why are you doing that to your elected leader? That's kind of stupid. And then afterwards, when you started reading her commentary, like, I mean, I know maybe she's a horrible person, I don't, quite possible, but maybe she likes to punch babies, I don't know. But her analysis and a lot of things she said afterwards, when she was, I guess, safe to do so, were like, yeah, she was trying to actually do something here. If you follow Alex Craner's work, you know that during her very short time as prime minister, she was bailing out the banks. She was basically bailing out the internal bond markets to the tune of like £1 billion a week, or something along those lines. I mean, that's might not be the accurate number, but it was a lot, like a lot of money every week. Was just kind of rinsing and repeating, getting through there to keep things from. And in August 2024. Famously, they had to do the exact same thing. The British markets almost had a hemorrhage, and bail them out to a tune of hundreds of millions, and then use that as a reason to get in there and refinance Ukraine war debt and a whole bunch of other things. Go listen to Alex Craner's work on that. It's something. Okay, let's speed this up. I realize, because I listen to this stuff a lot, so I kind of just get used to things kind of being a bit boring. You're like,
much looking after. It's hardy and drought resistant, and the fruit also fetches a rather high price when sold. Rice is the pineapple's polar opposite. Its killer app is that it delivers a lot of calories without using a lot of land. It grows very fast, so fast that you can cycle through 2 crops in a single year. Economical rice farming, like semiconductor manufacturing, is all about scale and volume. The issue with Japan's rice fabs, however, is that they are not big enough to achieve those things. The average Japanese rice farm is very small. This was a deliberate industrial policy choice made by the government after World War II, which emphasized that farmland should be owned by the people working it. For this reason, land reforms limited family and company farmland ownership, as well as how land lease contracts can be terminated. These are all important tools to prevent absentee landlords from accumulating vast tracts of land. These land reforms, which were also adopted in Taiwan, are widely seen as a vital industrial policy measure in revitalizing the ruined agricultural economy and blunting the appeal of communism. The end result of it, however, is that Japan's 2.3 million farms are small and fragmented. Depending on which source you most believe, the average Japanese farm is from 0.6 to 2 hectares large, with land spread across several plots. This is really tiny. To compare, the average American farm is roughly about 188 hectares. This difference in scale means two things. First, the small size prevents the average Japanese farm from adopting yield-boosting measures practiced abroad, like sowing seeds via airplane. Second, it means that most Japanese rice farmers do the rice farming thing as a side gig. Farming does not earn them enough for a living. There are 2.1 million farming households in Japan, and 40% of them earn less than $500,000 yen, or $4,500 a year, from farming.
So, right there, right? Small. So someone's saying here, let me see here. Moldy Apple says maybe Japan should go back to imperial again and take it over an area to make it an agricultural hub. We're going to get to that. This is a post-1945 plans that they had for a little bit, and they had to scrub it. And this is, like I said, I'm playing this for a reason, folks, because it gives you a little nice, interesting backdrop and gets us a little bit of paving for when I start talking about thick cultures. But right away, you're seeing a whole bunch of other problems that are connected to the financial sectors, obviously, but this is why controlled economies never work, because there's all these little tiny things that start piling up. You have a massive demographic collapse in Japan. A very old, huge aging population, very small younger population to hold them up. So a lot of these farmers, I'm not sure if you said it already or not, the average age for a lot of these farmers is about 65 years old. And they're part-timers. Which means when they go, it's gone. There's no one to replace them. Oops. Unless there's a whole bevy of people who are coming up behind. Right? Not there. So there's a problem. So now you're running out of people, and you're running out of people who know how to make the food. Your preferred food stock. So suddenly Japan is going to become completely dependent on imported food, which makes them incredibly vulnerable. See Africa. Automated rice paddies. Maybe. It's quite possible. But I don't even know what that does. I don't know, because I don't know the ins and outs of rice paddies and rice work. I know that some crops like fruit picking stuff, you can do some automation, but it's not all the best. So, I mean, this is dealing with water and stuff. So, typically robotics and water, not the best. But if they can rig something up, they'd have to, but they're going to have to do it fast. Like in the next 5-10 years. At minimum.
The majority of these part-timers are rice farmers. This lack of financial sustainability, plus the fact that the average farmer is today 69 years old, plays a big role in Japan's declining farmer population. Why become a farmer if you can't do it full-time? What is interesting, however, is that Taiwan had a similar policy and land farm distribution structure, yet Taiwanese rice farms produce more rice per hectare per year, and are also more labor efficient than their Japanese counterparts. Farm size matters, but something else is at play here. In the early 1940s, rice farmers sold their rice directly to the government. The government then resold the rice to the consumers at a set price. This was a wartime system and essentially rationing. Immediately after the war, there was nowhere near enough rice to go around, leading to widespread malnutrition and in some cases starvation. U.S. food aid at the time came primarily in the form of wheat. The American occupation authorities also promoted a more varied, i.e. less rice-dominant diet.
Def says, sounds like someone's rigging the markets. Yeah, but there's multiple riggings, which is the other problem with planned economies like this, especially on things that are vital like food, because suddenly you get and we've seen this before. We saw this with the longshoreman thing in the United States, right? You have these little guys. These little guys have these little fiefdoms, and they know they got leverage. They know. I mean, sometimes they're hooked up with some people, with little teamsters. Hey, don't get smart, okay? We'll smack the smart right out of your face. So they have these little fiefdoms, and they have little control nodes. They're not elected. They're just some guy. but they control that whole sector, and you got to go through them. I shared this story before, I think, but when I was working in Montreal, I worked at this place called Cupelli, very, very high-end steakhouse. And one of the richest guys there, by far, and there's some rich people coming through that place. He was the frozen chicken don, essentially, czar of the Northwest. Sorry, Northeast. So all frozen chicken products, import and export, out of the Northeast corridor of North America, pass through him in one way, shape, or form. And he was loaded. And he's one of those guys. You don't know. I can't remember his name. It was just, whatever. Phil, whatever. Francois. Oh, Booth, Tabernac. But, he's a nice dressed man, older man, whatever. Fine. But, not flashy. And, yeah, that guy's sitting on billions. So tons of these things. And then you get these embedded little groups that control these nexus nodes. And they don't give a crap what the government does. You pay me.
One particularly successful campaign included school lunches made of wheat flour bread and milk. Consumption of rice in Japan peaked in 1962 at about 118 kilograms. Assuming that a bowl of white rice weighs about 60 grams, that is about 5.4 bowls a day. Fast forward half a century to 2016, and Japanese ate about 2.5 bowls of rice a year. Meanwhile, fat and oil consumption is up 2.7 times, milk and dairy 3.2 times, and meat 4.2 times. Throughout the same 1950s and 1960s time period, rice production methods, new rice strains, fertilizers, and mechanical equipment revolutionized rice yields. This declining demand trend entangled with the supply boom to leave the country with surpluses. Rice prices were also perceived as being too low, concerning the politically powerful farming population. But the government cannot afford to buy all the rice they wanted to put on the market. So what to do? So in 1970, the government instituted a policy called the Rice Acreage Control System, or the Gentan. The Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries, or MAF, sets a national rice production limit for the year based on some estimate of the country's demand. The production limit is below the full capacity of Japan's rice paddies, so subsidies are issued to the rice farmers to divert some of their rice paddy acreage away from planting rice. Farmers might instead plant soybeans, wheat, or barley on this land, or just leave it fallow.
So do you hear that, right? So now the government basically saying, okay, look, we understand that you're not making enough money. There's these, and we also want to keep the price of rice at a certain point internally, for export. So we're going to just say you can designate this part of your field for soybeans and other cash crops, or just let it be fallow. Don't grow anything, and we'll subsidize you to the tune of whatever, so that you're not making any losses. It's a bitch's brew now, because you're adding on more and more contingencies to this plan. And you know how I say that liberalism is the art of stacking contradictions, mental contradictions to your mind. When you add liberalism into financial markets, it's essentially the act of, in post-Marshall Plan especially, it's the act of stacking economic contradictions. And hoping that nothing goes wrong. Hoping that just everything remains stable. If it remains stable, theoretically, you're fine. You're good. No problem. It works with widgets. It works with semiconductors. It should work here just fine. What is it? Just food, living in the field, subject to nature. What could go wrong? It's not like it's ever gone wrong before, right, folks? It's been a foolproof plan. Russia and China and Korea.
The Gentan was originally implemented as a temporary measure to tide the farmers over from the surpluses, but like with so many government policies, it ossified into a permanent thing. Alongside the Gentan system, of course, is a complicated system of tariffs that makes imports infeasible. And when certain trade agreements require the country to import rice, Japan has gone to some measures to avoid using that rice. I recall in my last rice video about how Japan had to import a minimum access amount of rice per its WTO treaty obligations, only to store that rice in...
Hang on. Let's bring this down to a more manageable point, because this point is nuts. Hang on. Okay. So in Japanese culture, rice is a big deal, especially rice of a certain culture. I remember watching that sushi documentary years ago. I Dream of Sushi, I think it's called, or something like that. And it was aging, one of these aging super sushi chefs, and he was going through all the things. It is Epic Mello, by the way. I saw that. His El Melo saying that his family in the Philippines owns rice paddies and mills. They might be able to cash in a little bit on this. The Japanese market, well, financially advise them. So yeah, but rice, and especially for sushi and all these other things, big deal. You know, the Japanese like to make sure everything's a little bit perfect, right? The little OCD with the Japanese. So they place insane value on simple things like a bowl of rice. So this next point is really interesting, and again, this is set up for when we talk about thick cultures.
Tariffs that makes imports infeasible. And when certain trade agreements require the country to import rice, Japan has gone to some measures to avoid using that rice. I recall in my last rice video about how Japan had to import a minimum access amount of rice per its WTO treaty obligations, only to store that rice in warehouses until it deteriorated enough to be used for animal feed. These trade protections, combined with the Gentan system, has artificially made inefficient part-time farming sustainable. The rice plots are small enough and prices just good enough to make it feasible for a Japanese farmer to maintain a certain lifestyle, at a cost to the consumer, of course. You might argue that one upside of this government-managed rice market is that it might be able to keep prices stable. From 2022 to 2023, the prices of noodles and bread in Japan surged 8.1% and 11.1%, likely due to higher oil prices in wake of the Ukraine war.
Craig says, "Are you telling me my $50 sushi is going to be $100 now?" Yes, and it's not going to taste that good either. It's going to be shitty sushi, shitty sushi, shitty shu. No good.
Meanwhile, rice prices actually fell. But you can also argue that it has left the system brittle, apt to disruption by supply or demand shocks. In 2023, a significant heat wave swept over Asia, setting temperature records all over the continent. Japan was also affected, with many areas making new record highs. Rice is sensitive to heat, preferring a moderate climate between 25 and 35 degrees Celsius, and going out of that range causes issues. The plant is even more sensitive to high heat during critical periods when the seedlings emerge and establish their roots. When exposed to too much heat, the rice plants suffer a heat shock that reduces yields and also turns their grains chalky. The chalkiness affects the rice's grade and value, though if it's not too bad, the rice still tastes okay. The 2023 heat waves caused rice quality in Japan to deteriorate. It was reported that at the end of October 2023, the proportion of first-grade rice had fallen 16 percentage points to just 59.6%. In response, it seems like Japanese retailers dipped into existing storage rather than sell inferior quality rice into the market. Considering all this, what happened next was predictable: rice shortages. Shelves went empty, and this sparked hoarding behavior from individuals and businesses, forcing stores to limit purchases to 1 5-kilogram bag each. People started to draw down from their inventories, and by June 2024, rice stores were already at a multi-year low.
Let's talk about the psychological effect of this. For those of us who remember, because never forget, during the long flu season, toilet paper. Remember that? Runs from toilet paper? Couldn't get toilet paper. Toilet paper was being hoarded away, and news reports about toilet paper and all that kind of stuff. Seems silly, right? But it did play a psychological effect, and people started hoarding other things. I know I did. We had a chest-high freezer in Montreal all the time, and my wife was pregnant, and that thing was full. I almost almost drained my savings account to keep that fucker full at all times. Because you don't know, right? What if there's a run on something and you can't get it anymore? So that's how it is for months, years even. You don't know, right? You start playing all those weird scenarios in your mind. And it sounds outrageous, but again, because something that you're used to having all the time, that you're always used to going to the store and having, you just never think about toilet paper being out for some reason. Or, okay, this store is out of toilet paper because their schmuck didn't order the thing. You go down the other store and, it's there, right? You can get it's in the city somewhere. You can get your hands on it. It's not like it's not going to be around. And then you find out there's no countrywide shortage. Well, shit. What do you mean? And if you're a restaurant, if you're anything else like that, all of a sudden your price index just shoots through the roof. Restaurants run on margins. We often quite tight margins. So suddenly a massive uptick or price or shortage on something that you have to have because, if you're a sushi place, well, even a shitty sushi place has got to have rice. So, and it's a culinary staple in Japan. It's cultural. It's part of their thick culture. I would say it's the backbone. And it's a weird thing, right? you get these things, you're like, well, why is rice so important? Well, I think all cultures have it. In Canada, it's maple syrup. I was talking to Matt Erickson about this, and he offered that in America it'd be gasoline prices. And I think I kind of went back and forth on that, thinking about it, and I think it's true. And that gasoline is, gas prices is just the thing that Americans really stake a lot of, they can tell the financial winds how it's blowing based on the price of a gallon of gas. And so for the Japanese, it's rice. And it's one thing that, they're porous, they're adaptive, their culture has done a lot of changes. Hey, baseball, wrestling, whoo, cool, American, yay, hey, Joe. And they've done a lot of changes post World War II because, well, they were forced to. You get 2 nuclear bombs dropped on you, change your culture damn quick. Like, okay, hey, what are we doing now? Hey, what do you want? What do you want? You want some Robotech? Transforming robots, give them the kids. It's fine. You'll love them. So, we get it, right? But there's just some things that Japanese culture is going to live and die on, literally. And when it gets down to food, this is where we get to critical areas. Because theoretically, I guess, you could make an argument. I guess maybe in America, depending where you live, you got to drive. Some places there's like miles and miles different. America's big. America can be big inside of a city. So you got to transport. Most people don't live right next to where they work. Or something that may need to change over time. But anyways, right now in 2025, that's reality. So gas prices get to a certain point, hey, we got problems. We saw that in the 1970s. I think we're going to start seeing that again. Oil and gas prices are doing weird stuff. Depending who you ask, it's either going to bottom out at $40 a barrel, which will be good for a lot of other things. Right? Lowering gas prices, people are more happy with that. Or, I don't know if we'll have time to do it today, but I've been looking into this a bit. Or they're going to spike. And it really comes down to the Iran deal, and probably why U.S. really wants to make sure that Iran deal is okay and get that Russia-Ukraine situation figured out. Ceasefires, right? Pressure, ceasefire. That's not going to happen now. I think that's completely screwed. But tune in on Tuesdays with me and Jim Jotches. We'll be talking more about that. But either way, if you take this narrative and you plop it in and you start looking at what people are doing, a lot of other things start making sense. It fits the narrative, if nothing else. It gives me peace of mind because you go look around and go, oh, well, yeah, they would be doing that. Or they did that now. Well, that makes sense. Oh, the tariffs are sucking in USD to reshore USD to get the currency back up. That makes sense. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's long-term going to be beneficial for you or me or whoever, but it makes sense. I like when things make sense. It makes me happy. So now we're having this psychological effect. Imagine Japan, the rice is a staple. You're used to always being there. You show up in the stores and the rice are gone. And the rice is gone. So we're talking about people hoarding money now. Stalls the economy, stops it dead in its tracks. Liquidity markets are frozen or start to seize up.
At the same time, the 2023-2024 period also saw the end of a 10-year-long decline in rice demand. Since 2014, Japan had seen annual rice demand declines by about 100,000 tons per year. This is due to major demographic trends like people getting older and families getting smaller. This trend finally ended in the 2023-2024 season when demand, quote-unquote, surged up 110,000 tons, or 1.6%, to about 7 million tons. This was in part blamed on Japan's tourism boom. Post-COVID conditions and a weak yen had fueled unprecedented tourism numbers, and these tourists love Japanese food like sushi and rice balls. Estimates of tourist rice consumption was about 51,000 tons, up 2.7-fold from the prior 12 months. In addition to these record-breaking tourist numbers, there were the already low inventories of 2024, several typhoons in the summer, and a major earthquake in August. The latter sparked panic buying that sent prices soaring. Despite all these acting factors, the 2024 rice harvest only increased about 180,000 tons from prior, which is not as much as you might expect with rice prices doubling. Again, This is because the Japanese domestic rice market is not a free one. So let us just remove the Gentan system, right? Easy? However,
Galactus says, I converted to Christianity just in time. We're so effed. This is the last thing I needed to see to be sure of it. Well, yeah. Keep this in mind, folks. This is what I've been saying for over almost a year now. Once you tap into this and see what this is, as it is, these things are just going to happen. This is like, it's like gravity. At a certain point, things tick over, and it's just going to happen. And there was a plan, and that plan, the Build Back Better, Great Reset, was the plan. And that plan was going to put you into pods, little 15-minute cities, little districts, and control all your resources, own nothing, and be happy, and seize all the assets, and do a complete and total controlled economic order. They oftentimes talk about one world governments. Ooh, spooky. Well, in this epoch that we're seeing the end of, because it's the epoch of the merchants, mercantilism, the liberal frame that I drone on about quite a bit really was established and preserved by the merchant class, who wanted to get rid of the kings and take over. If you watch the last Network Armageddon Electric Boogaloo, I did with Matthew Erickson over on his channel on King Build. If you on my YouTube page, there's a playlist for it as well under Jason and Friends. One of the things I talk about is this inversion that we're seeing. And essentially, under the old classic system, you had the king at the top, and you had the lords beneath the king. Now, the lords would give about, let's say, and we'll keep it easy. Let's say you have 10 lords and 1 king. Well, the 10 lords agree to give 10% of each of their own sovereignty up into the king. So their little bit of power goes into this vestige of this one guy called the king, who's going to make decisions and arbitrate between all of them, because the lords keep getting into little fights. The more alike people are, the more rivals they become. So the king's a nice little decision maker for them. Okay, they see that little bit of power. So it's not all their power, but it's a little bit, and you got to invest into this one office. And below them, as we saw at the start of the Enlightenment, were the merchant class. So suddenly, with shipping and all the rest of it and trade routes, you started seeing the Dutch East India Company and later on the British East India Company and all these international trade routes, colonialism, created this massive merchant class who, at one point or another, had technically more wealth and more power and more leverage than the king and even the lords. The merchants like, why the heck do we need these guys? So they started to invert the order. And they did this really nice little thing. Clever. Got to give them. During the Industrial Revolution, they created this thing called a middle class. Like most of us. And heck, they even give the middle class, starting with the men, a vote. You lucky little fuckers. You give us a vote. Give us a little bit of power. Because he called us a citizen. He said, we have all these things called rights. And you have this little bit of power. Look at you. Look at you. This little tiny bit of power. Because you're part of this too. But in reality, it's a lie. That's the big giant lie. Because really, in the inverted world, where the merchants are at the top, the oligarchs, then you have sort of the lords or elites, a little bit downstream from them. And then you have the king, the leadership. Well, it's inverted. So the king's the least, leadership is the least powerful of the group. And they create this little middle class, because the middle class substantiates the lie. So you're not a citizen, you're a cog. I know when I start talking about this, people go, oh, communism. I'm like, no, because it's all part of the whole thing. Capitalism, communism, fascism and communism, socialism, democratic liberalism, whatever you want to call it, classic liberalism, libertarianism, feminism, Zionism, all the isms. They're all there to give people the illusion that they have power. Because these are political systems. They're ideologies. They're theories. And people try to be them. But you can't actually be a feminist. It's impossible. Because feminism doesn't inform your daily rituals. Feminism doesn't tell you what to do when you get up. Feminism doesn't tell you what to eat, what to do with your day, how to raise your kids. Maybe when I tell them, teach feminism to your kids, you're like, okay, and then what? What else we do? Well, just more feminism. It's good for GDP. Okay. But all these ideologies are not, in Orthodox, we have a term called phronema, which is like a worldview, but it's more meaningful than that. It's a state of being. So being Orthodox or being a Christian informs your everyday life. It's full of rituals. Every Wednesday and Friday I fast. Go to church on Sunday, make my prayers in the morning and evening, during the day. There's a rhythm to these things. And as you become more of something, you begin to shed other things and become more of this other thing. In liberalism, they try to doing this with the woke. That's what wokeism was kind of about. It was trying to introduce this sort of some sort of phronema. But again, it's not a state of being, it's a state of action. It's activism. So go to the rally, wear the stupid hat. Here, wave the sign around. What are we on this week? Black people. What's next week? Troons. Okay. It's a whole month. Feast days, celebration days, all these little artificial things. But again, there's not a state of being. It doesn't tell you really how to organize and do what to do with your life. It's not about that. What they really want you to do with your life is be a nice little cog. Produce GDP. Make more. And if you're a good little cog, you get greased. But if you break, oh, that's sad. But you just get replaced. Because you're just a cog. Don't be a squeaky one. Don't be a bad cog. Don't get uppity. Don't have imaginations of being a widget. No. You're a cog. You're born and raised to be a cog. You'll live and die as a cog. Dreaming. The cog that dreams of being a citizen. Because to be a citizen means something. It has to mean something. Or else you're just a cog. A citizen has duties and responsibilities. But it's given to them and they accept as they grow older. Either as an immigrant or a fresh person who's imported into a culture or someone who's born and raised in it. Things like tradition. Time-honored tradition means something. Hope, wealth, prosperity. These are things you dream of, you build towards. Perhaps you never truly get, but you get your fingers on it. It's what you work towards. Because we're builders. Why? Because it's what we do. We're builders. Citizens belong in civilization because we build these things. They belong to us. They are reflective of us. And Western civilization is built by Western people, by Western men who have vision and thick culture, who have an orthodoxy, not just a religion, but that helps too. They have a regio. They have a region, a people, a culture, and a language. They have a ruler or a government that they cede certain powers to, and who respects them because they respect the king. And these two people are reflective of each other. And they have a religion. That forms that regio, that binding agent. So those men can then generate their human capital, their competency, build, and reinvest into the civilization. The civilization grows like a tree. We fuel it with our competency. That is what we are. That is what a citizen is. and a citizen cares for his land and for his neighbors and for his history, his language, his art, so his children can inherit it and take that inheritance and build it with it. But for the last, 400 odd years, we've been slowly stripped of citizen, even though that was a promise. And perhaps at different times we were. But the object is just to make us cogs. Cogs who dream of citizenship. But I don't know about you, but I'm tired of being a cog. I don't want to be a cog. I want to be a citizen. It's my birthright. So, I think we take it. We take our birthright back. I think as these things begin to fall, as they are, we look with clear eyes. We see who's involved. We band together. As Picanona says, you collectivize or you die. Now's the time. You got to choose your king now. And it's not time to play around, pretend you're into Thor or a druid. You get yourself to church, you return, you repent, and you redeem. You start that process of redemption. It's going to take the rest of your life. But you start it. You start it now, because things are about to get tough. And I'm not one of those guys who comes on here every week squawking about, I watch those guys. I didn't want to be those guys. I got the hair like those guys. Crazy hair. Eurodale University. Nice guy, but all the time with this guy. Because you turn into that person. I don't want to be that guy. And this is heavy, right? It's Saturday morning. Hey, cartoons. Do cartoons later. But it's time to start seeing clearly, folks. We can play the rest of this video, but basically what he gets through here is rice distribution, talking about this little fiefdom. So this called Gentan is the policy, and then he kind of confirms what I read earlier in the report. Essentially is this. The big one here is self-sufficiency. Let's get to here. And of course, go watch this if you want to watch the whole thing. It's over on YouTube. The channel name is Asian Ometry, and go check that out when you have the chance. But this is the self-sufficiency situation, which is coming for all of us in some ways.
And has built up an extensive infrastructure to support its policy goal of achieving 100% rice self-sufficiency. This infrastructure seems to have done the job a little too well. Now the government spends a great deal of money and resources trying to balance rice supply and demand each year. That is because of rice's quote-unquote special place in Japanese cuisine. But this infrastructure largely neglects other foods with significant calorie share of the Japanese diet. Japanese don't get 60% of their calories from rice anymore, like how it was in the 1960s. In 2023, Japan's self-sufficiency rate, when calculated on a calorie basis, was 38%, low compared to other developed countries. Based on 2019 numbers, Canada was 233% self-sufficient, Australia 169%, and the United States 121%. Okay, fine, those are countries with lots of land. But Switzerland, very mountainous and quite small, is at 54% per 2007 data, the UK 58%. So Japan trails far behind its comparables, though it does seem to be ahead of Korea. Rice is iconic in the Japanese diet, but these other foods are pretty special too. Ramen, for instance, is heavily dependent on food imports, including wheat, soybeans, and edible oils. Trading a bit of rice self-sufficiency for noodle or vegetable self-sufficiency might be a fair trade. We shall see how things go with trade agreements and tariffs, but I buy the argument of a former Japanese agricultural ministry official named Kazuhito Yamashita, who argues that truer food security in terms of rice is better had by building a competitive rice industry. Since 1961, global production of rice has gone up by about 3.5 times. Some Asian countries like Vietnam, Thailand.
I always love this stuff. The solution is just to build a better competitive rice industry. Oh, really? Oh, good. Okay. How are you going to do that? Oh, well, we'll just do that. I'm like, oh, okay. Do you realize you're facing like potential starvation, right? Like, with who? Who are you doing this with? Your average age of your farmers are 69 years old, sir. You got some extra farmers hanging out. Where are you going to get them from? Other places? The Japanese are not happy with non-Japanese people, especially other Asian people. I had a Japanese girlfriend once, pretty briefly, and yeah, stuff coming out of her mouth made me blush. Like, Jesus, I thought I was bigot. No, there's levels to this shit. So, God bless you. Good luck. I mean, again, if they're in really bad times, I guess they're going to take what they can get. But then again, okay, so let's say you import a whole bunch of Vietnamese rice farmers in to help grow rice to fix the rice industry. Cupelli, great. Do you just become Vietnam then? With kimonos? Oops. Humble Trades FX says, hello, sir. Hello, new sub. I saw you over at Raging Tomato. Yeah. Very interested in how London controlled our dollar as a Forex trader. I feel I need to know. Well, go check out Tales of the Shadow Empire. You can buy your copy on Gumroad. There are episodes here on YouTube as well, so you can check that whole out as well. I don't know if we'll get really into the City of London talk on this episode, but I'm sure if you go through the back catalog, I've talked a lot about it. Watch the Tom Luongo talk. That's available out there. And again, if you like that stuff, go over to Gumroad, buy yourself a copy of Tales of the Shadow Empire. It's got Stormy Waters, Tom Luongo, Jim Jatras, and Charles Badil in that package. And I'm working on volume 2, so that should be coming up as well. What else is going on? Galactus says, do you bother to argue for or against ideologies and definitions, such as fascist, communist, capitalist, etc.? Or do you consider these labels meaningless since people can barely even agree to them? My contention, Galactus, is that these things all form this thing called a liberal frame. So we can think of liberalism so the frame itself is a mental frame, it's a category, and inside of it is all your isms and all the side effects of those isms. So your fascisms and your Zionisms and your nationalisms and all those things. Basically, what holds them all together is the Enlightenment ideals. Really out of nominalism, and nominalism gets you materialism, and from materialism you get to individualism. And those three core concepts, really, there's a few others, but those three substantiate liberal frame. And all these ideologies all boil down to these three elements. Nominalism believing that the metaphysical doesn't really exist, or is a self-product of the mind, that only things that really exist are materialism things. That gets you into materialism, although there's various definitions of materialism, but on a philosophical basis, that's it. So all we understand is material, physical objects, or let's say universal objects, planets and suns and things, and the things that act on them. So gravity, all those other things we can understand through science, so empiricism, and everything. I guess it's a very reductive way of thinking. Perfect for merchants. You want to reduce everything down to value. What are some of your values? And first we start off with items and trade things like tobacco and tea and gum, roads, and all that stuff. Rubber. And then you get down to actual people, slave trades, all the rest of it. And now we're into ideas and data. But it's all bringing it down to a material core values. This is why I said you're cogs, not citizens. And all these other wonderful things like rights and all these other things are just ways to keep you happy. Keep you happy and keep you producing. Keep going to work. Get up early in the morning and drink your water with Himalayan sea salt. Now, when I say all this, some people might think of this and go, you're against exceptionalism. You're against people make... No. Not at all. What I'm against is is doing all these things and having it and basically having it taken all your effort and all your capital and all these other things is just taken by other people. And they're not doing, and the sin of it is they're not doing anything with it. If the situation was the same, but they at least were building cool shit with it, I wouldn't have so much of a problem with it. I'd be like, well, it sucks, but look at the buildings. We have strip malls. We've harnessed ourselves into the most ugly period of history for nothing. There's no joy in it. It's just people bean counters. And then, of course, the elites have the audacity to release these videos to the rest of us so we can all watch. And they call us useless eaters. How nice of them. Oh, thanks. Thanks, guys. Useless, you say? Well, they're not talking about me. They're talking about the other guy. I don't know. No, they're talking about you. And me. Yeah. So, that's the thing that I find offensive. I'm angry. I'm not going to take it anymore. So, okay. We've laid out the basics, right? We understand. Rice prices in Japan are going up. Up and up and up. Puts a strain on the market, puts a strain on tons of subsidiary economies, hospitality, all the rest of it. Household incomes. Puts that strain, puts that psychological strain. He mentioned it, I think in the report I read before, the actual increase in overall cost of living is only went about 3% or so, but it feels like a lot more because things that you depend on are not as available anymore. And that plays on you. So people start hoarding money. This has the ripple effect in the economy, right? The cogs start freaking out a little bit. So the next few things I'm going to do is a little walk down narrative road with you. So this is just a report from Nippon confirming what we just talked about rising rice prices. Here's from CNBC. Now, I had mentioned before, I don't have these up on the screen, but you can go up and check it if you want. In February of this year, there were early reports were talking about how wonderful the Japanese economy is going to be in 2025. In April of this year, people were astounded. Japan bonds were selling like crazy. The 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, initial bond sales are great. Even the 40-year bonds, a big uptick. People are moving their money out of the U.S. because the Trump's tariffs, allegedly, and moving it to Japan, Germany, and Switzerland, mostly. Stores of value. And, of course, Japan has always been a pillar for this thing called carry trade, which is I'll read it from my notes here. It's a strategy borrowing at low interest rates and reinvesting in a currency or a financial product with higher rates of return. So the Japanese, as we said, the Japanese interest rates were actually at negative yield, right? At negative interest rates. So banks had to pay to park their money, which was great for international investment, bad for the Japanese currency. But hey, if you're running on investment, you're basically an investment country. That's how you're paying your bills. Okay, so February, everybody, all the experts, Japan's going to be amazing this year. April, tariffs happen, money starts flowing in, and everyone goes, "Oh my God, Japan, crushing." So let's get to this. Is from May 16th of 2025. It's from CNBC. Japan assets saw record inflows in April as investors fled U.S. markets. Their promise still holds. Key points. Japan market saw record growth in foreign purchases of its equities and long-term bonds in April. Japanese assets are generally considered a haven, whose appeal rose as the sell U.S. narrative gained ground in April, as Rashmi Garg, a senior portfolio manager at Al Dhabi Capital. There's a quote. It was quite an exceptional month when you consider everything that has happened in the global macroeconomic environment, said Kei Okunawa. Okay. Japan saw record foreign inflows into its equities and long-term bonds in April as investors fled U.S. markets following President Donald Trump's trade salvo against friends and foes alike. Now, keep in mind, this is still when Japan is the largest holder of U.S. treasuries, around somewhere around $1.5 trillion officially on the books. This is not counting derivatives. Overseas investors bought 8.21 trillion yen, or 56.6 billion worth of equities and long-term bonds in April, according to the government data. The net inflows were the largest for the calendar month since Japan's finance ministry started collecting data in 1996, according to Morningstar. Trump tariff shocks likely changed global investors' outlook on the U.S. economy and asset performance, which likely led to diversification away from the U.S. to other major markets, including Japan, said Yujiro Goto, Nomura's head of FX strategy in Japan. Now, with the U.S. softening its trade stance and striking deals, including that with China, the confidence in U.S. assets is getting restored. So what does that bode for Japanese assets? Most of the 8.21 trillion yen of net inflows also occurred in the first week right before April 2nd, according to the ministry's data. Following Trump's reciprocal tariffs announcement, the U.S. 10-year Treasury yield spiked by 30 basis points, April 3rd to 9th. Keep that in mind. While Japan's 10-year yield fell by 21 basis points from the 2nd to the 8th. So, much more easier for people to borrow money in Japan because of falling yield rates. Which means if you're doing this carry trade, easier to borrow money in Japanese yen and invest in other places to get to make money off the interest trade. While equities globally saw a sell-off in immediate aftermath of Trump tariffs for the full month, Japan's Nikkei 225 rose over 1% compared with the S&P 500, which dropped by a little under 1%. Japanese assets are generally considered a haven, whose appeal rose as the sell U.S. narrative gained ground in April. The inflow was largely driven by institutional investors rather than retail investors, said Nomura's Goto. Pension funds and other asset managers likely bought equities aggressively. Pension funds is a big one, because this is not just pension funds in Japan. A lot of other international pension funds are also doing these investments to keep the pension funds going, right? Especially as the boomers are now really starting to die off in more steady amounts. I've shared this story before, but a little interesting note. And this is, I think, what put the bug in my head when I started to investigate this. This has always stuck with me. The Quebec pension plan in, I want to say 2020, somewhere in there, 2019, 2020. Don't have me at the exact date. Almost went under. Had to get bailed out. Emergency bailout. Tune of X millions. Because Cirque du Soleil declared bankruptcy. Huh? What? Cirque du Soleil, the gay circus? Yeah, that one. So, Cirque du Soleil started off in Montreal, right? It's Montreal business. Much like Bombardier. That's the other problem with the Bombardier story that Matt and I talked about that in last year. Can't remember. It's part of our Civilizational Capital series. You can get that hold of that. Buy yourself a membership, $2. Get yourself to the back catalogs. What was I saying? But the money they had tied up the Quebec pension plan had tied up a lot of its money into Cirque du Soleil, tune of like hundreds of millions of dollars. So when Cirque du Soleil went in receivership, all of a sudden the Quebec pension plan had to go find that money. Oops, where? Oh. Now I'm sure they had some reassurance, all the rest of it to back it up, but it was a thing. Little blip on the headlines. I remember reading going, what? No. What do you mean? What? That seems silly. Why would you? But you're in Canada and it's Quebec and you're like, well, everyone's kind of corrupt. And maybe it was someone's cousin, Joe Fleur, or knew some guy, hey, right? But it still hit me as like, that seems weird that you would tie things like a pension plan to a gay circus. Why would you do that? Hello, Jonathan Hemingway. So when you start seeing this stuff, you start understanding that people, especially pension plans, global pension plans, everywhere from Europe to North America, are looking to back up their pension plans aggressively in other bond markets, whether it be Japan or all these other places. That's where these things get really crazy, because you have to understand that a lot of your pension, your 401k, or if you're in Australia here, your super, everyone thinks it's hedge fund. It's basically a hedge fund that's running. This is your GDP go up thing. It needs to go up, and Wall Street is very important. It's like no, because by and large your 401k and all that stuff, it might be tied up in stocks, in certain commodities for sure. As part of it probably is, but a lot of it is tied up in bonds, and those can be international treasuries. So a little bit of adjustment in any of these markets suddenly just goes woo. And that's where we're kind of at right now. So I started off the show saying, was I wrong? And kind of. I said that we would see a major event between March and May. And we've seen a few major events, but not exactly what we consider a collapse. But this thing's going on in the background. Because again, if you think it's going to be Mad Max, it might be. I highly doubt it. Or the Great Depression, Dust Bowl. People traveling on trains. Woody Guthrie. Maybe that might happen. But no matter how it happens, and no matter how it happens in your area of the world, these things are already happening in the background. And this is what I'm going to prove to you today. So if anyone ever says, Jason's wrong, I'm like, well, there's all this. So please explain this then to me. Because maybe I'm an idiot. I don't know. But I look at these reports and I read these things from people who write these things and seem to be paid to talk about these things anyways. And I do the due diligence of checking them out from other sources and try to confirm as much as I can. And he keeps coming up to the same conclusions. So you got something different, I'm all yours. And Jonathan Hemingway says, always missing the live stream, but I am passionate about rice. Well, got a whole thing about rice earlier, John. You missed it. Now we're into stocks and bond stuff. It's the boring shit. Okay. Okay, so they talk about life insurers, also pension funds, according to more. So keep that in mind, right? Life insurance, pension plans, home insurance, business insurance, corporate insurance. That's people always talk about bonds and treasuries being a thing about debt, and that's true, right? Buying up debt is part of it. It certainly is how governments finance their debt, and how corporations will finance their debt with corporate bonds. But the one thing that people don't understand is that bonds, because they're guarantees, you're always going to get that paid out. The government will just print money if they have to pay you out. So now we're in this. This is the death cycle of it, and what people are waking up to, because you have the global. America is the global reserve currency. So every single dollar, physical or printed as an offshore dollar, is in some way, shape, or form tied back to USD, directly or indirectly. And under globalism, people were printing out money like crazy, and American interest rates kept going down. So it became much more attractive to borrow money in USD and not your local currency, especially if you lived in some place like Bangladesh, because you're in Bangladesh. So people would borrow money in USD. Good times. Interest rates keep going down. They have to pay back less. And their local currency would be going up because more investments were going in there. Yay, globalism. Good times. Here's the problem. Globalism kept stretching out to all the countries in the world and creating these markets, investing in these markets and creating these markets in these countries. But those markets in those countries never created depth. They only were spread out. They didn't go down or up. America has the deepest markets in the world. Why is that? Because America sells the idea of the market itself. Hollywood is a great example. Hollywood sells the concept of movie, blockbuster. Everyone wants American movies. Chinese people want, give me Marvel. They'll watch They'll watch Black Panther, for Christ's sake. They don't even like black people. Did you hear about the new white Black Panther? Sign of the times. Start bringing home some South Africans in the United States, all of a sudden you have a white Black Panther. It's amazing. Anyways, I digress. Wakanda's going to get a makeover. I'll have more Starbucks. So the American dollar is the world's reserve currency. We all know that. All the money is tied up to it. Lost my train of thought. Thinking about white Black Panther. White Black Panther? Having roast dinners on Sundays. It'd be nice. Nice one. Get the zebra off the table. No, we're having roast. Come on, with pudding. Come on, please. So the leverage point here is that okay. So as you're printing out more and more money, the value of that USD, the value of that reserve currency goes down because the more of something there is, the less valuable it is. So suddenly, everyone who's holding these treasuries are holding these ticking time bombs, because especially if you're holding a 30, 40-year bond, well, by the time you get be able to cash that out, it ain't going to be worth nothing. So the yield rates have to keep going up to guarantee it of inflation or currency devaluation. But now you're holding still paper that, again, you can only raise them so high, because as you cash these things out, now you're creating the thing that you're trying to hedge against, which is inflation. So you're creating this. You're creating the thing that you're trying to bulwark yourself against. Oops. So the more you raise the yields, the more inflation goes up. At some point, you can't raise something's going to break. That's a major part of the thesis, at least how I'm positioning it. So then when you tie that into things like pension funds, life insurance, well, that's tied to older people. And what do you have in the world right now? A larger group of older people than younger people. Oops. So as those life insurance policies get called out, get cashed in, as those pension funds need to be cashed in, people start selling bonds because they have to cash it out, and that's part of the scheme. But if there's no buyers, or if the bonds ain't worth shit, or if the governments can't pay you out, or if the governments have to print more money in order to pay you out, therefore increasing inflation, therefore devaluing the dollar more, you see? A bit of a bitch's brew. Okay, so it goes on, essentially saying that, hey, great, things are great, right? This is reporting from April. This is reporting in beginning of May 16th, but talking about April in Japanese markets, okay? So I say this to get to this. This is May 28th, so 10 days later. Demand at Japan's 40-year bond auction sinks as fiscal doubts prevail. So I just read you that whole thing, right? Yay! Everyone's dumping their money out of the America. They're not buying American. They're going to buy Japanese. It's a good store of value. And do your little carry trades, make some money. Hey, business as usual, right? Things are getting a little scary, a little nervous. Hey, everyone's a little good. No, hey, whoa. What is the nudge? Let's calm things down. Okay. That was 10 days before. They were talking about the April finances in Japan. Now, 10 days later, out of Reuters, Tokyo, May 28th. A lackluster auction for Japan's longest-dated bonds on Wednesday did little to relieve sovereign debt markets, where fiscal debt concerns have driven a worrying surge in long-term yields. Heavily indebted Japanese government bonds have become the canary in the global duration coal mine, Goldman Sachs analysis wrote last week after a very poor sale of 20-year bonds. The Ministry of Finance sold about thank you very much. We'll get to that in a second. Thank you very much. JLH is tipped $5. Is this enough USD to buy a pack of cigarettes over in Australia? No. Pack of smokes. I'll tell you this. So this is a 30-gram pack of tobacco. And this This little fucker cost me $90 USD. That's right, Australian, which is like, I want to say $60 American, thereabouts. So, but I appreciate the $5. I'll put it on the pile. I appreciate it. Gets us closer to the goal. Get that $2,000 goal, my friends. Send that 250. Send it over to Streamlabs. Any way you like. Sorry, that distracted me. Money. Whoa. Hey. The poor results come after a week after Japan's 40-year yields touch a record high, 3.675%, along with a all-time high for 30-year paper and a multi-decade peak for 20-year debt. I know this gets a little technical, folks, so I'll speak through this quickly and just kind of give you an idea, a translation of it. On Tuesday, bond rallied after the Ministry of Finance was said to have circulated a survey among major bond buyers and accredited gains after Reuters reported the ministry is considering restrictions to its sales of super long bonds. The swift recovery of Japanese government bonds in the previous session may have dampened demand for the 40-year auction. He added that sovereigns like the United States and Japan will likely face even steeper borrowing costs. So here's what's happening, right? Bond yields in Japan, especially the 30-year yields, 40-year yields, which are really important. I told you the 10-year yields are really important for mortgages and car loans and all that kind of stuff. Your 30 and 40-year bonds are really good indications of the overall health, longevity of your economic system. Confidence in the system itself. Because you invest in 30, 40 ones because you're expecting it to be there in 30, 40 years. So if people are like freaking out and not investing in those, not buying those bonds, even at lower rates, or they had standard rates at 3%, they dropped those rates to just under 3% to try to boost sales, and no one's buying. Here's the other big number you look at. Yeah, Japanese government bonds yields ticketed higher, and the yen erased losses after the auction on Wednesday. 30-year yields were affected the most, up 10 basis points on the day at 2.93%, while 40-year yields sold 5 basis points to 3.35. Long-dated debt had sold off globally in recent weeks on concerns of tax cuts and the chaotic rollout of sweeping tariffs by U.S. President Donald Trump. Again, most of these problems were long before Donald Trump even got in office. These will stoke inflation and impel governments to spend more. That has driven up the term premium, the actual wild yield offered to buyers in exchange for locking up their money in longer-dated securities. So, here's a big number. General government debt percentage of GDP. The G7 average is around 130%. So debt to GDP. Germany's just a little bit over 50. Canada's around 100. UK is about the same. US comes in a little bit higher than that to basically the G7 average, around 125. Italy's just a little higher than that, so about maybe 140. And Japan is at around 250% of debt to GDP. That's crazy. So, in the U.S., they talk about, the debt and all that stuff and how crazy it is. Okay, so as bad as you think your debt and your finances are in the United States and prognosis and, overall systems, yeah, Japan's double that. They have more debt than their GDP. They have 250% more debt to their GDP. So there ain't no paying it back by themselves. Impossible. Which is why they're relying so much on external investments into the country. And as that investment dries up or moves to other places, suddenly Japan is put in a position where they're going to have to start cashing in treasury bonds they're holding a whole bunch of to start making sure that their currency doesn't completely collapse, which we covered in the first report. So, okay. So there's the story out of May 28th. The 40-year bond auction sinks. Fiscal doubts start propping up all the place. Even though just 10 days before, everyone's saying, it's great. Look at this. April, fantastic. Right? Okay. Scoot a few days later down, on May 31st, we get this out of bar chart. Breaking Japan. Japanese stocks just saw a weekly outflow of almost 12 billion, the largest in history. So remember, in April, lots of people were basically told, put your money in Japan, buy up, buy equities, buy stocks, right? Put your money in Japan because it's going to go places. But a little later on in May, they go, oh, not so good. And by late May, just a few days ago, craters. $12 billion shaved off in the Japanese stock market. Let's read through. Again, this gets a little technical. We'll kind of skip it through a little bit, okay? 12 billion yanked from Japanese equities in a week. The largest in history isn't a trade. It's a vote of no confidence in Japan's entire capital market architecture. Here's what it really means. Decoded in full clarity. Thank you, by the way, people who keep posting these things in ChatGPT language. It's easy to read, anyways. Liquid vacuum confirmation. About liquidity again. Japan has been one of the last remaining carry trade pillars in the global system. So we detailed that before, right? Borrowing at low interest rates in a currency, then reinvesting in a currency or financial product with a higher rate of return. And Japan was a major facilitator of that. Japan has one of the last remaining carry trade pillars in the global system. The Bank of Japan's near zero rate regime acted as a liquidity anchor, stable, predictable, and insulated. The outflow signals that investors are no longer trust the Japanese shield. Whether this is due to carry trade collapse risk, MOF losing control, bond market tremors, as we saw with the failed 40-year auction, or geopolitical factors tied to the China-U.S. axis. Capital just said, get me out now. Trigger for a second-order contagion. When capital flees a safe economy like Japan, it doesn't just disappear. It reroutes, and the destinations are crucial. U.S. Treasuries, not with fiscal risk imploding. European debt, not stable enough. Gold, yes. Bitcoin, absolutely. Here's the other place it's also flowing to is the Swiss. It's getting going into Swiss francs, but because of how the Swiss rates are going, things aren't even moving in the Swiss rates. And I'll do a whole separate show on that. It's kind of collecting data all day, yesterday and today. Like I said, I read all this stuff and I have to translate it for myself, and hopefully for anyone who's listening. If there's any questions in the chat, let me know. If I'm going too fast or if you want me to go over anything again, you let me know. In reflexive terms, Bitcoin is increasingly acting as a receiver of forced capital rotation. As traditional asset systems fragment, Bitcoin absorbs the displacement. This outflow is not bearish, it's a hidden ignition vector. So, Matt Erickson has been talking about this, Tom Luongo has been talking about this, I've done some little bit talking about this. The Bitcoin right now, especially out of Steve Saylor, with MicroStrategies and a few other places, it seemed to be setting up a parallel bond market to absorb a lot of this kind of influx. So as people looking around to where can we put money that's safe, because everyone's freaking out, they need someplace safe, they're offering that safety net in Bitcoin, especially American Bitcoin. It's a big deal. Yen crisis acceleration. To fund this outflow, Japanese investors are likely liquidating yen-dominated assets. This means carry trade pressure increases, imported inflation surges, and Bank of Japan either defends the yen, tightens, or kills equities, or yields to collapse, prints or kills bonds. The other thing it can do, of course, is sell treasuries if there's buyers. U.S. treasuries, which puts the U.S. bond market suddenly at risk. Because, well, people sell bonds and exchange bonds and all that kind of stuff, but you also think that all the derivatives are attached to these things too. So as you're moving things around and adjustments start happening, a whole bunch of weird shit can start happening all over the place, all at once. And so now we're looking for the adjustments. And again, keep in mind, as I was saying about these Japanese stories, the reason I'm sharing this is basically within one calendar month, we go from, or if you want to start back from February, we go from Japanese doing great prognosis, oh my God, April's amazing, to 30-year bond sell-off, 40-year bond sell-off didn't go as well as we thought, to oh my God, everything's on fire. And rice is too expensive. So local people are freaking out. Everyone's freaking out. Quietly, with respect, because they're Japanese. They're nice, quiet people. The market is front-running what Japan still pretends it can control. Proof the narrative shift has begun. Retail hasn't seen it yet, but smart money is already behaving like the old system is unraveling. This chart is a signal of exit velocity, not from Japan specifically, but from the assumptions that central banks are in control, sovereign bonds are safe, and fiat equilibrium can be managed. Keep in mind, again, we saw in April, a lot of life insurance and pension funds started flowing to Japan. And now they just shaved off $12 billion in their stock market. Oops, a lot of their equity funds went away. Oops, and Japan's central bank is responding. Deepest layer. This isn't about Japan. This is about the end of belief in managed decline. It's the sound of capital choosing exile over obedience. This is a Tom Longo point. He's been talking a lot about this. And the ignition is accelerating. And Bitcoin is a lifeboat that doesn't ask questions. Okay, so this is a Bitcoin thing, whatever. But again, Bitcoin, as I said at the start of the show, I'm not a financial advisor, but something you should look into. Okay. You guys want to take a break? When we keep going, where are we at? Almost 2 hours. Oh, I'm going to have a drink. Any questions in the chat? So that's Japan. There's Japan markets. So we start off with the rice crisis, right? Leading to pressures and local pressures within the Japanese population and businesses. So that starts putting a squeeze on your internal lifeblood. People stop spending money. You start getting stagnation within local economies. Then you see the bulwark, the thing that Japan was basically set up to do after the Marshall Plan, which is be almost like a place of safe haven, right? For USD and global finance, all the rest of it. Well, that's starting to backfire now. And you're starting to see capital flight. Because anyone with any liquidity, and now the derivative market is no good, so they're not putting them in that. They're just trying to get their money out and create as much liquidity for themselves so that when things happen, they can start to move money fast. Liquidity is a really big factor in all these things because what ends up happening is, okay, if you have your money tied up in, let's say, this is a big thing about BlackRock, Larry Fink. Most of BlackRock sitting on all this money, and the Fed, did all this funny stuff with them to insure them and all this stuff, so they can start buying up assets like crazy to basically back up their holdings. Because the most thing that BlackRock's holding are pension funds, 401ks, and all the rest of it, right? Well, those you can't move those; they're set. They're money people gave you. You maybe make some interest off it, but you can't really do much with that. So that's why Larry Fink and Janet Yellen at the time made a deal and allowed BlackRock to basically just buy up stuff on the Fed's behalf or on the Biden regime's behalf, or the Obama regime before that. And that was the idea. And then you started to see that in the Bank of England. You see that someone asked about the City of London. What were they doing in London? They're buying up they're kicking off the farmers off their land, one way or the other, climate crisis and all the rest of it, and buying up the land on cheap. Why? Well, because land, at the very least, is an asset. So they can put the numbers on the books. Keep this thing going a little longer until they try to figure things out. The war in Ukraine. Why do you think Britain's so hot about the war in Ukraine? Because they really hate Russia? Well, a little bit there. Yeah, there's a history. Because they think they can win a war with Russia? Probably not likely. But they need to, because they've refinanced a lot of British debt, a lot of those derivative markets, a lot of that bond markets. They helped Ukraine restructure their debt in 2024. Oh, that debt, by the way, that Ukraine just defaulted on. Oops. Yeah. Over $500 million that Ukraine was supposed to owe on June 2nd. They just said, we don't have it. Another little story out of Ukraine. Probably do it with Jim on Tuesday. But Ukraine's also welched on a prisoner exchange, but specifically dead body exchange. So the Russians have a lot of dead Ukrainian soldiers' bodies that they said, we'll give them back to you. And they had a whole agreement signed up. And Ukraine welched on the deal, walked away from it. Because when they received the bodies, they were supposed to pay out families of the dead. And they don't have enough money. Ukraine is bankrupt. And as Ukraine goes down, now the Bank of England is tied up in Ukraine. Dun, dun, dun. So this whole Marshall Plan, which was set up essentially to really rebuild Japan and Germany. We'll get to Germany in a sec. Post-war. Also to rebuild Europe. Because Europe was all fugazi and needed to be rebuilt. And, and some nice little guys out of the city of London kind of got their hands on that money printer. And started setting up the global markets. Marshall Plan also helped set up Israel. The 80-year curse is really doing something, right? Land lease stuff to Russia. That's why they could cancel that land lease stuff. So Stalin was a big hero. These are funneling money all over the place. You got to keep that in mind because, as I said, the spirit of the vengeful son's coming. And as people become more aware of this, and especially when this starts hitting home, there's a lot of people looking for someone to blame. And there's a lot of people to blame. Don't worry. There's a lot of people who knew about this and facilitated this. A lot of other people who didn't know shit all about this, who were just doing what they were told to do, inherited this system, and they're just doing the thing. Applying economic theory to the system that they had. Keynesian, whatever. They didn't know. I don't understand why their government's doing these things, weird things. So, you want to direct your blame. If you want to get angry at people and stuff like that, I'm showing you who to get angry with. Now, don't go getting doing stupidness. I'm just simply saying, if you want to point a finger, I'm helping you find the people to point the finger at. I don't want no Luigis in the chat, okay? Spam my foot. But this is going down. And it's going down fast now. So as I said, I did an episode back in December. And my initial speculation about where this collapse was probably going to start. I was looking for the first domino, right? And I had a few speculations. One was Germany. My big guess was big Germany. Because of the bankruptcy rate in Germany. And so looking at these bankruptcy rates going, well, you can't have this. You can't also have this because the euro, essentially, was built with Germany in mind. Germany was going to be the industrial sector of Europe, which it was for a very long time. And it was the backbone. It was the wealth generator. There's other places doing their business too. France, Britain, Spain, sure. But Germany was the powerhouse. Especially when the Berlin Wall fell down and they reconjoined. Oh, my goodness. Off to the races. German automotives. Americans buy more cars out of Germany than almost any other place. German cars sell great in America. Huge part of the economy. And that's all being liquidated. Reports as early as late last year and early this year, the German automotive industry was almost insolvent completely. Everyone, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, BMW, all the big names, gone. Receivership, hemorrhaging money, being bought up by China aggressively. Now, no guarantees that they're going to keep the business in. The Chinese will keep the business in Germany and administrate it there. They may just buy the brand, ship it over to China, do it out of China. Vorps says German cars used to be amazing. Now they're over-engineered, fragile crap. Yeah, well, they had to keep up in the market, right? Especially with EVs. A lot of the things I'm going to tell you now, plug this stuff in when you look at the big beautiful bill. You start to do some not even long range forecasting of what some of these provisions. Why would you do it now? Well, if you know some things aren't going to be around tomorrow or next week or whatever, makes a little sense. Okay. Look at Germany. So Japan, one pillar of the Marshall Plan, massive holder of U.S. Treasuries, whole financial system, when you look into it, was basically just set up to do a rinse. They were setting that up in Ukraine, right? Money laundering, rinsing, moving that money around, creating that big spin of money. Keep it going, keep it moving. And every so often, someone goes, "Whoo, what that billion? What? I've always had that house in the Riviera. What are you talking about?" It's passed down by my Ukrainian grandmother. Come on. So, Ukrainians have been living there for years. Please. So, now the next big pillar of the Marshall Plan, Germany. As I said, the Euro's base was built around the concept of Germany being the powerhouse. And what they've been doing in the last little while, this goes to that idea that this is part of a plan, to the Great Reset plan, was to deindustrialize Germany. So you could move the German industry to the developing nations and let them build it up to create depth in those markets. They couldn't generate their own depth, so you had to basically take all that stuff you built up in Germany and move it elsewhere. And then hopefully that Germany will just become an administrative state like America. Hopefully that. Mm-hmm. If not, well, the thing collapses, then you reset it and clue-clay, right? Keep this in mind for the bond markets as well, right? Because we're also getting to insurance markets here. So the headline reads, this is from the remix. Although this is not the only it's not the only publication reporting on this. Worse than the 2008 financial crisis, Germany becomes a nation of bankruptcy with no end in sight. Bleak times ahead in Germany, with one bankruptcy auctioneer in the business for 30 years saying it was worse than the 2008 financial crisis. I was reporting on this in December. Just saying. Germany is bracing for a continued surge in major insolvencies throughout 2025 and even 2026, according to a recent analysis by credit insurer Allianz Trade. This all comes after a disastrous 2024, which saw a record-breaking number of bankruptcies in the country. Allianz Trade forecasts an overall increase of 11% in corporate insolvencies in Germany this year, reaching approximately 24,400 cases. I've read this number a few times now, and it still staggers me. A further 3% rise to 25,000 cases is anticipated for 2026. These insolvencies put an estimated 210,000 jobs at risk across Germany. In the first quarter of this year, 16 large German companies, those with revenues of 50 million pounds or more, 50 million euros or more, filed for insolvency. While this is a slight decrease in the 3 cases compared to the same period last year, it's double the number recorded in the first quarter of 2023. We can play a little bit of this. This is Alice Weidel, leader of the AfD, saw it all coming. She predicted Germany's economic demise 3 years ago. Now the German economy, run by the left and the Greens, is in shambles. Volkswagen plans to close 3 plants and cut 30,000 workers.
Was ich viel interessanter finde, auch während
I'll just read it out here. What I find much more interesting, both during the election campaign and this evening, is that the Greens, who are seeking a climate government here, are being stylized as the political center in Germany. So if we now have reached the point where we are even, considering the Greens as a coalition partner, then I can only say good night. Industrial location, Federal Germany of Republic of Germany. Yeah. So in industry, gone. Green initiatives. Part of that whole deal. Create those carbon credits, which is code for, social credit score. Ooh, bad, ooh. China's doing it. They're evil, right? We wouldn't do that. No, we're just going to create this climate, your carbon credits. along with ESG and DEI and corporate America, who basically finances and helps you, who says that you can invest in. That all came to head during the Bud Light scandal with Dylan Mulvaney. Remember that? Remember that one? Everyone hated Bud Light for a bit. And it affected their investment. Everyone was like, no one was sweating it. I told everyone, don't sweat that because unless it affects their ESG score, it's not going to matter. And then Bud Light fumbled the response, and it actually affected their ESG score. And like, oh, now you worry. now you worry if you're Bud, because that affected your ESG score. Was just basically telling investors who you're safe or who you're permitted to invest in. Who's going to get the gives? Who you can get tax rebates and all the little goodies from. And that's Larry Fink initiatives, which is tied into WEF and Bank of England and all those nice things. Milo Bogert, CEO of Alliance Trade in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, expressed concern over the presently high number of major insolvencies, attributing it partly to U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs policy. See, they always do this, right? This is they're setting up the scapegoat. Unfortunately, like I said, I was reporting about this, specifically German bankruptcies, back in December of 2024, before Trump even took office, before he was sworn in. No tariffs. Nah. And in private conversations, I was like, I think it's going to be Germany. I think the inflection point is going to be in Germany. Now, I wasn't looking at Japan markets. But I was like, you can't have this many bankruptcies, especially in major industries. The one thing I tracked in that episode was they had closed, the report at that time was a closure of a really big chemical plant that had been around in Germany, in this town in Germany, for, I don't know, 75 odd years, whatever. And I'm like, well, that town's cooked. Because we've seen this happen in the Rust Belt, right? Philadelphia and Baltimore and all these other places. Where Detroit, where the major industry, the thing that the towns basically built itself around. Towns used to build themselves around churches, and then during the Industrial Revolution, they started building themselves around factories. So this factory's been there for, I forget, over 100 years, I think it was. So the entire town is built up around that factory. It's a factory town. Factory closes down, well, puts out, what, a third, 2/3 of the population out of work. Everyone else around that who has businesses that are associated probably in some way, shape, or form to that factory are now also going to go bankrupt. Cascade effect. What's tied in to all these businesses? These are big, giant businesses who have insurance. A lot of their employees probably also have unemployment insurance or some sort of like that, chômage, right? Germany's a socialist country, so they're going to start to, at the very least, you put a whole bunch of people now on the dole. We're sucking up services. So money's going out to them. Insurance claims go out. At the very least, now you have a major contributor to insurance policies and to GDP and all these other things gone. Bye. Maybe they get bought up by the Chinese. Maybe the Chinese runs the center. Maybe they just close it down. Maybe it's competition to them. Maybe it's better for the Chinese to buy you and put you out of business because you're competition to their big factory. They don't want that. Oops. So these things are happening crazy. There's a 10x multiplier in Germany of bankruptcies from about post-COVID. So there's only so many things you can blame on COVID. After that recovery, quote unquote, bankruptcy rates just kept 10xing. That's also happening in America, by the way. And if you go back and listen to my some of the talks I had with Dark Enlightenment, especially around your city's bankrupt, you'll understand also why they're importing so many immigrants into these little towns, all the places. Because every single immigrant came with a price tag. You accept all these immigrants, you set up a little immigrant station, little NGO, little thing to house them, little thing to facilitate them, and the Fed was funneling you money. Found out through USAID and a few other things. which for a lot of these small towns was the only ways they're staying open because they're all going bankrupt. Oops. Given the bleak economic outlook in both in Germany and in global trade, and the many uncertainties caused by the tariff storm, we expect many major insolvencies and thus significant losses to continue in 2025, Bogart stated. He added that these large-scale insolvencies will likely have a ripple effect on supplier companies' potential, creating particularly large holes in their coffers, impacting supply chains. Again, it's all these little things that are connected to them that have been set up in Germany for a long time. Before the war, during the war, after the war. Volkswagen, BMW, about to go. Gone. Imagine that. Buy your Hugo Boss suits now, folks. Might be on sale soon. However, alarm bells are ringing across the country. The Federal Association of German Industry, BDI, published a declaration by more than 100 associations at the beginning of April, where they directly addressed the ruling CDU and SDP. At the time, they were still working on coalition agreements. The BDI has stated in the past few weeks the economic situation has deteriorated dramatically. The facts are undeniable. Germany is in serious economic crisis. A comparison with other countries shows that this crisis is primarily homemade. Now, keep in mind also there's that whole Nord Stream pipeline that went poof, soaring Germany energy prices beyond rationale. So your energy prices are spiking. Your taxes are out of control. Bad general governance from the government. More and more businesses are going out of business. So now your supply chains and all that stuff, even if your business is doing all right, maybe the other business that you depend on to be solvent are now gone, insolvent, bought out, bye, see ya. So now you're hemorrhaging. They're also unhappy with the tax policy. In terms of tax policy, the coalition lags behind what is necessary. In the future, every scope must be used to relieve companies in order for the tax burden to quickly become internationally competitive, says Tanja Gonger. This contract rightly formulates an ambitious modernization agenda for the state and administration, which must now also be followed by determined implementation. The bottom line is that we will measure the federal government by whether it will take the state more efficient and modernized. That's a really nice way of saying austerity. I told you, been warning you if you've been paying attention to the channel. Austerity is going to be the buzzword. Ford Germany plans on cutting 4,000 jobs as Berlin's economic disaster continues to unfold. The entire automotive industry is in crisis all over the world, in Europe and especially in Germany. This transition to electromobility is hitting us very, very hard. And now, Trump, in the big, beautiful bill, if it's passed as is, or more or less, and I think it's going to get passed pretty much perfectly because of this whole Elon bust up. We'll get to that speculation in a second. Cutting the EV credits. So a lot of these companies like Ford and all the rest of it, not going to be able to afford to do those electric cars anymore. Is that good for Tesla or bad for Tesla? Trump just got rid of Elon's competitions. Just bye. These sectors particularly affected include textile-related retail, so clothing manufacturing, the automotive supply industry, and healthcare. In the first quarter of 2025 alone, 3 German hospitals and 3 large textile companies filed for insolvency, alongside 2 automotive suppliers and 2 chemical companies. Here in Australia, by the way, a major healthcare provider and industry who owns a whole bunch of hospitals and all that stuff also has gone bankrupt. You want to play a little narrative game, folks? Keep your eyes for bankruptcy rates. In 2024, Germany saw a negative record of 87 major insolvencies, a 36% increase from the previous year. The combined turnover of these affected companies reached 17.4 billion euros, marking a 55% jump compared to 2023. In an article, reporters spoke to Jürgen Filippi, a publicly appointed auctioneer who also writes court reports for bankruptcy advisors. He's been working in the business for 30 years. There was a lot going on in the 2008 financial crisis and subsequent years, but now it's worse. More and more industries are affected. I haven't seen that yet, said Filippi, who's also so overburdened with bankruptcies that he's turned many clients away. He also says there are fewer and fewer buyers willing to try and turn companies around. I'm increasingly observing that managing directors do not want to continue their battered business companies, although there are still market opportunities. Their reasoning, taxes are too high, too much bureaucracy, said Filippi. I don't want to do that anymore. I hear that more and more, he added. So, as I said before, the psychological aspect of this is also profound, because you're not just dealing with metaphysical, economic, hillbilly, as he was, a lot of stuff. No, you're dealing with, like, people just giving up. So even if there is potential to turn the business around and keep it solvent and do business, people are like, nah, I'm done. I'm out. Give me my money. I'm out. Go to South Africa. I don't know where you're going to go. Japan? Oops. Nope. Germany is now, actually, technically, because Japan's been selling off their bonds. So Germany is now number one in U.S. Treasury holder. There was Japan, Germany, and China, and then the UK. Things are not looking good in the UK. Germany is facing a 2008 financial crisis that's worse than that crisis. Japan is saying reports saying that it's looking for them worse than 2008 Greece. And these are the guys who are holding all the U.S. treasuries. All of them. A lot of them. It's beginning to look a lot like I was fucking right. You thought I was going to apologize. You thought I was going to say no. You thought I was going to get an L out of me, didn't you? You thought I was going to do that. Nah. Papa don't play no mess. It's happening, folks. Oh, and it started happening in May, by the way. So, you're welcome. Now, because I know a lot of my listeners are American, we need to talk about America. You know that little place. Land of the freedom. Send me some of your freedom dollars, folks. I'm living in the colonies out here. These things aren't cheap. The wine is cheaper than the tobacco. It's crazy. This is like $9. The tobacco is $90. It's nuts. But anyways, $9 USD. This is like, I don't even know what that is in USD. Like $3, something. Send me your money, please. Keep the lights on. It's weird. I know. I'm saying all these things. It's all doom and gloom. Oh, finances. Oh, money's on fire. Send me some. I feel like a schmuck, but it is where it is. Here's a good thing. If you're in the U.S., especially, and because you're watching this, you're getting a heads up, right? One of my sales pitch for the Tales of the Shadow Empire series is, what would you have done in 2019 if you knew what was going to happen in 2020? And you couldn't have done anything differently, but you knew what was going to happen. How much time did you waste? I can speak personally. I spent a lot of time in about the first year there going, I don't know what's going on. Lockdowns, what? More masks? How many masks? Right? It's crazy. It's depressing, stressful. And you see all people do weird things. Trying to take the joy out of you. Gave me a religious experience out of it. So, cheers to that. But it brought me to here. That was a decision to move the family out to Australia. For better or for worse, here we are. Now, I say that because there's always opportunities in everything. The one thing that's going to give you the best edge, no matter, and this is, I can't, because I may not be able to give you advice, tell you what to do or how to do it, but I can tell you this: keep calm. These things are going to happen. These things are in motion. Don't get distracted, and I don't want to be one of these people like, oh, if there's good news, don't listen to the good news. I'll put it out here, folks. Maybe there's another plan I'm not aware of that they're going to pull out last minute and golden parachute everyone into Cupelli and, hey, bond market is fixed. Magic wand, no problem. Maybe. Sure. Probably not. What does this mean for you on a basic level? Because, as I said before, we've had these little mini Great Depressions in different sectors before. And depending on where you're at or how it affected you, maybe you didn't get affected at all. Depending where you're living in the world, maybe you just blew on by. Canada, during the 2008 crisis, didn't really affect us that much. So I did some asking. We'll get to grok in a second. Let me see if I have this. I can find this. Hang on. Let's put this up. Okay, so this got posted just earlier on June 7th, 2:55 a.m. This is posted by the great Martis. Now, again, I can't validate any of these people or these accounts, so take everything by the grain of salt. I look at these things and try to do my data analysis thing, and I look at something and I'm looking against other facts. So I present these things only because I think it's an interesting indicator. If you come out and tell me that this great Martis guy is, and all the rest of it, sure. Okay. But the graph is the graph. It's a graph of the U.S. 10-year bond yields. It's just gone up 0.119% or 2.7%. 2.71%, sorry. To it's now cresting at 4.521. So just getting shy of that 5% mark. And of course, it's been increasing, right? We had that little dip. Little dips here, little dips there, right? People are freaking out. Ooh, little dip, little dip, little dip. But this is how it's been increasing dramatically in a very short period of time. And as we get closer and closer to that 5% again, as we saw in April, things begin to adjust because they have to, because that's how these things work, or so I'm told. So I asked grok, what would 5% U.S. 10-year bond yield rates do to the economy? And this is what it says. 5% yield on U.S. 10-year Treasury note would signal a significant shift in market expectations and could have wide-ranging effects on the economy. Below is a concise analysis of the potential impacts based on economic principles and a recent market dynamics. Higher borrowing costs across the economy. Mortgages. The 10-year Treasury rate yield, is a benchmark for mortgage rates. At 5%, the average 30-year fixed mortgage rate could rise to 7.5% or higher, as seen in October 2023 when yields briefly hit 5%, pushing mortgage rates above 7.6%. This would further reduce housing affordability, dampen home sales, and slow the housing market. For example, home sales dropped nearly 2% in April 2024 when yields rose to 4.73%. So we've been here before, folks. So there's one thing like, oh, okay, but we've been here before. And a lot of people say, it's fine, it's just a thing, right? But you take into consideration all the other things happening. Here's the other thing about the housing market. I don't know if I have this graph ready here. Let me see if I can find it. That's the that's the 10-year graph we can share if you want to not sleep tonight. I don't have it here. There's a report coming out that for the first time in a very long time, there are more sellers in the U.S. real estate market than there are buyers. This is something that Stormy Waters said you're going to see very soon. It's going to start happening in Florida, and the rollback is across the country. what that essentially means is you're going to start seeing corrections in the housing market itself. Because initially, it's not a big deal, right? More sellers than buyers, right? Price adjusts a little bit. At the higher ends, they're fine. At the lower ends, the people who are going to have to catch up, they're going to have to drop their prices significantly to be able to entice buyers. People who have to sell, right? Maybe they're flippers and all that. They're in a state that they have to sell, so they're going to take a haircut on this. As they start to drop the prices on the lower end, it's going to affect the entire prices across the board. So now your prices for your homes, which people are going to go, yay, great. It's like, yeah, great. The problem is this mortgage rate, because your mortgage rates are going to go up. So as the price goes down, the mortgage rates go up. You're still caught in the middle. So that's something to keep in mind. But if you don't have a house yet, this might be good. Potentially, housing prices are going to drop dramatically. So I don't want to give all the bad things. There's some, like I said, opportunities. Inside a crisis, there's always going to be opportunities. Consumer and business loans. Higher yields increase borrowing costs for auto loans. Ding, ding. Already at 7.62% for 5-year loans in 2023. Student loans, credit cards, and corporate borrowing. This could reduce consumer spending and business investment, slowing economic growth. Now, remember, they just came out with this big hurrah, yay! The GDP forecast for America is looking up. It's 4% growth in the next quarter. Everyone goes, yay! Until this happens, like, what? Government borrowing. The U.S. government would face higher interest costs on new debt, straining the federal budget, especially with concerns about raising deficits. Moody's 2025 downgraded the U.S. debt, cited unsustainable deficit spending as a factor. What did Elon just freak out about in the spending bill? Of course, Congress attached a whole bunch of stuff too, because Congress. And look, I'm not going to get into the whole debate. I know it's going back and forth. Stephen Miller and all those fine folks, J.D. Vance was on Theo Vaughn saying, hey, it's great, it's getting all these other things in, and these things are important. I agree, it's good, fine, fantastic. We always judge the results, not the speech, right? And we also don't have the bill passed, so we'll see what actually gets passed in the bill. But if all these things start happening right around the bill's time or right afterwards, if you're a Trump supporter, or if you're, whatever, somewhere in the support of Trump, you got to worry about the PR on this, because this gets passed, Elon's made a big fuss, and all of a sudden if things go, the economy just tanks. Unless there's an international event where they can blame those person on, it'll get a little hairy for Trump in the midterms. Impact on the financial markets. So again, this is, I asked Rock about a 5%. If 10-year Treasury bonds reach a 5% yield, what would happen to the economy? Impact on financial markets, stock market pressure. Higher yields make bonds more attractive compared to equities. Potential diverting investments from stocks. In October 2023, when the 10-year hit 4.02, the S&P 500 fell into a technical correction. A sustained 5% yield could trigger similar volatility, especially if economic growth slows or recession fears mount. Bond market volatility. Raising yields, falling bond prices, could lead to losses for bondholders, particularly those holding long-dated treasuries. Ding, ding, ding. Hedge funds, unwinding debt-fueled debt bets, e.g. basis trades, could exacerbate market turbulence, as seen in October 25, when yields surged to 4.5%. Now, you got to keep this in mind, too. As these rates increase, as the yields increase, and everything gets into flux, and suddenly you get all these corrections, I remind you back to the 2018 gilt crisis in the UK. Or do I have this over here? Where do I have it? Let's just do a fast one here. Explain 2018 gilt prices. UK. This is from JP Morgan. Let me just find it here. Yeah, the collateral damage. I think I've done this one before, but in this report, if you just type it into your Google search, you can find it. This is from J.P. Morgan. He goes through this whole crisis. 3 days in September. I'll just read this really quickly. In less than 3 days in September 2022, a 30-year UK. This is from the 22 situation. A 30-year UK gilt rose more than 1.60% for UK defined benefit DB pension schemes that typically manage their liquidity based on a scenario of bond yields raising by 1% over a period of a week or more. The size and unprecedented speed of this increase created a perfect storm. They had to quickly generate appropriate collateral to meet the sizable margin calls on interest rate swaps and FX forward positions. So essentially, there's this. You got your bonds, you got your pension funds. Now they're set up to be able to deal with a 1% influx rate in a week, right? Give or take. That's their forward position. Suddenly the gilt yields rose more than 1.6%, and they didn't have enough money to cover it. They freaked out because you also have all these derivatives bills based on it. They're like scrambling to find the cash. So all your margin calls and your carry trade stuff all of a sudden was called in, where the VIC was called, and they didn't have enough money to cover it. Oops. And then they put in a position of like, well, do we print the money, which is raising inflation, which does funny things to your bond market as well, or because higher inflation, people raise the bond rates, so then you can't borrow as much. That puts you in a tighter bind. So a 1.6% increase threw them off, and they lost, I don't know the numbers here, but they shielded about $2 trillion pounds in a day or weekend. Yeah, here it is. Managers generally hold large pools of gilts to meet their obligations on non-cleared trades, and they are required to post cash as variation margins, VM, on cleared trades. This is also derivative markets, right? The size of the UK DB liabilities versus the total size of the UK gilt market is significant, 1.4 trillion versus 2.1 trillion respectively. And when managers began selling their liability-driven investments, LDI, and gilts to raise cash, it perpetuated a vicious cycle of falling prices. Ultimately, we saw the Bank of England step in and buy gilts to stabilize the price, finalizing a short-circuiting of negative feedback loop. So yeah, they were on the line. They basically got a haircut with 2.1 trillion pounds. Oops. So yeah, stock market pressures. Bond market volatility we covered. Dollar strength, higher yields could strengthen U.S. dollar. Good. As investors seek higher returns on U.S. assets, this could hurt U.S. exporters by making goods more expensive abroad and impact emerging markets by increasing their dollar-denominated debt burdens. Bad. So, internally, your dollar's going to be worth more. Yay. Externally, people aren't going to. It's going to be harder to trade with it. Not so great. Although, really, part of my speculation, part of the theory is that what Trump and the tariffs are trying to do is get that USD back, reshore it as much as possible, which will strengthen the dollar because it means like less of that dollar's out there. And a lot of what Jerome Powell and the Fed was doing by raising interest rates and Jamie Dimon by not accepting European debt was basically freezing the money printer. They're trying to freeze it out so people stop printing so much fucking USD. Loaning out money in USD, and then bring that money back home as much as possible to reshore it, and then put it in places so if the thing does, when the things start falling, there's cushion. So we're going to find out how much cushion they've been able to build up. Inflation, the Federal Reserve policy. Inflation expectations. A 5% yield often reflects a higher inflation expectations or uncertainty about future inflation. Investors demand higher yields to compensate for reduced purchasing power. If inflation remains above the Fed's 2% target, e.g. 2.5 to 2.6% PCE in January 2025, the Fed may pause rate cuts or maintain higher rates, further tightening financial conditions. Again, making it harder and harder to borrow or move money. Liquidity gets stalled. Policy uncertainty. Policies like tariffs or tax cuts could fuel inflation, pushing yields higher. The Fed might respond by keeping rates elevated, slowing economic activity to curb inflation. So the big thing we're gonna find out very soon, because this big beautiful bill is supposed to be passed in July, and we'll see if it doesn't hit 5% yields before that, is what does that passing that bill do to these yield rates? Does it will bring them down, which is the hope, or will it shoot them through the roof? Now, considering that, the other thing that's going to play into this is U.S. Treasuries being sold abroad. So, quite possibly, by Japan and Germany selling off those bonds en masse if they have to, that's also might spike yield rates. Economic growth and recession risks. Slowing growth. Higher borrowing costs could dampen consumer spending and business investment. Slowing GDP growth in interest rate-sensitive sectors like housing and autos are particularly vulnerable. Post on X suggests a 5% yield could exacerbate affordability issues and cool demand rapidly. So that EV car demands, I think Tesla will weather it because Tesla is still trying to hit that higher-end market. We'll see if Elon's done too much damage to his brand. It can be restored pretty easily. Maybe he turns around. I'm done with MAGA. I'm your liberal now again. And goes, yay, we can buy Tesla again. Yay. He's a good guy now. He's thinking about the earth. Remember the earth? Remember the earth?
How dare you?
Remember that? Well, get Greta then. Greta, honestly, Greta and Zelensky should go on tour. Just the give me money tour. Give me money. Money. Everything can be fixed with money. You got a global climate crisis. We're all going to die from the heat. You know what can fix that? Money.
How dare you?
It's true. Mella says he needs those rich liberals to buy his Teslas. It's true. They're still buying them, man. Come on. There's always those little fads, right? It's like it was like the rednecks with Bud Light. Everyone stopped buying Bud Light for a month, and then like Kid Rocks came out and said, "No, it's cool again." And everyone's like, "Oh, what faggots? What?" Yeah. I ain't gay if I drink it. As long as I don't like it, right? Reminds me of an old joke. The joke goes something like this. I gotta be careful on YouTube. I hate the funny people. I fuck them to hurt them. Sorry. Silver linings, folks. Come on. It's an entertainment show. Oh yeah, I always forget this. Here. Chill out. It's gonna be okay. We're going to make it. We're just seeing the end of a mercantile system. 400-year-old mercantile system, the end of a shadow government, end of the post-war consensus and monetary policy. The 80-year curse is coming to fruition on 3 multiple fronts. It's crazy. Hey, man, here's one thing. You're alive. You're alive. This is what being alive feels like. Ain't it great? Excuse me. So give me some money so I can smoke more. Apparently that's what I need. All right. And then global impacts. Rising U.S. yields could tighten global financial conditions, impacting borrowing costs worldwide. For example, Japan's 30-year bond yields hit 21-year highs, and Britain's reached 1998 levels in 2025 due to U.S. yield spillovers. positive effects for investors. Higher returns. A 5% yield could offer better returns for bond investors, particularly in safer assets like treasuries or municipal bonds, which could provide tax advantage income. This could attract capital to fixed income markets. Also, if housing markets, if what we're seeing is that less sellers than buyers, that catches up and starts to plummet the prices, people are going to start buying land. Another thing you could do in Minecraft if I was giving you advice, which I'm not, because I'm not a financial advisor. No, no, no. But if I had a bunch of money, I would wait till the housing market pops, or at least decreases. Buy me as much land as I could, maybe with some friends or your family. It's land. That's safe advice. Yeah, that silence was Jason dancing to see for those listening. You gotta be watching it, friends. You missed the hair. You missed my dancing. Come on. This is white man dancing too. This is the best dancing there is. This is freedom dancing. This is dancing that builds civilizations. Right here. Right there. Just in the shoulder groove. Right. Oh. Is he gonna keep doing? Oh no. Oh, we got a shimmy. Oh, I gotta edit that out. No, not the dancing, the audio clip. Potential risks and uncertainties. Debt concerns. Rising yields could signal investor unease about U.S. debt sustainability, especially after Moody's, S&P, and Fitch's downgrades 2011 to 2025. However, demand for treasuries remains strong, with foreign buyers increasing holdings through March 2025. Market fragility. A rapid rise of 5% could destabilize markets, as seen in April 2025, when the tariff-induced sell-offs pushed yields to 4.5%, which we're back to again. Bond vigilantes could make borrowing punitively expensive, limiting government policy flexibility. And global spillovers. Emerging markets could face capital outflows and currency depreciation, while developed markets like Japan and the UK might see their bond yields rise in tandem, increasing global borrowing costs. So, pressure on the borrowing. So now, even if you want to borrow money to help out your financial situation, you can't, because everything's so tight that you can't do that without just printing more money, which just increases inflation, which increases your problems. Rising energy costs, because, of course, they totally effed up and blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, whoever those were, damn Russians. And couldn't get the Ukraine-Russia thing sorted out, so now energy prices are spiking. Of course, you had, well, don't worry, we have Syria, right? Syria's going to be fine. Oh, Syria's in a civil war. Oh, shit. What else is going on? Iran deal, well, unless Israel makes good with their promise and nukes Iran or missile strikes Iran, their nuclear facilities, because Israel's gone crazy, and 80-year curse coming out, coming up. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Netanyahu about to go to jail. Got to blow something up. That's the way we keep this going. Big beautiful bill, though, right, folks? Saving grace, maybe. Who knows? What? A few things in that big beautiful bill, which we're going to talk about. Going to talk about this. Hang on. Let me close some of this down. UK Guild. Oh, that's where it was. Silly me. Silly man. So, let's get to some good news, shall we? Well, potentially good news for the Americans in the audience. What is this in here? Okay. This is a big one. So now what I speculate to see, turn that off. What I speculate to see is you're going to see, depending where you're living, you're going to start seeing people react. Australia, like I mentioned, unrealized capital gains, especially around housing, is coming in. Everyone's freaking out about that for good reason. Higher taxes, probably across the board, especially in Europe. Austerity, like I said before. But you're starting to see little ways, right? Little things are coming up. Basically, just starting to get sucking that money. What's Donald Trump doing? This is one other good reason to approve this One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So this is from Battle Beagle. Tucked deep in Donald Trump's sprawling One Big Beautiful Bill Act is a clause that could quietly take billions from money sent abroad. It proposes a 3.5 tax on remittances sent abroad by foreign workers, including green card holders and temporary visa workers, such as those on H-1B visas. So tucked inside Donald Trump's sprawling One Big Clause, that is a clause that could quietly take billions of money sent abroad. It proposes a 3.5 tax on remittances sent abroad by foreign workers, including green card holders and temporary visa workers, such as those on H-1B visas. For India, the world's top remittance recipient, the implications are serious, says experts. Other major recipients include Mexico, China, the Philippines, France, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. I'm assuming France is on there not because of the French people. In 2023, baguettes, I don't know what a baguette costs nowadays. In 2023, Indians abroad, check this out. In 2023, Indians abroad sent home, ready for it, 119 billion. Enough to finance half of India's goods trade deficit and outpace foreign direct investments, according to a paper by Reserve Bank of India, RBI, and economists. Of this, the largest share came from the U.S. For millions of migrants, that includes the money required to cover parents' medicine, or a nephew's tuition, or a mortgage back home. Mortgage back home. Back home, you say? Well, aren't you living here? I guess if you're on H-1B or whatever, sure, you know. You're planning on going home at some point, maybe it's one day. Yeah. So, on the face of it, 3.5% tax, not a big deal. But when you start looking at 119 billion, with the majority coming out of the United States, I don't know what the number is. Let's say it's 80 billion, something, right? 75 billion, sure. 3.5% tax on that. Oh, that's a little bit of money. You can spread that around. That's a little spending cash for you. It's nice. Hey, you put that in your back pocket. You don't tell anyone about it. You know what I'm saying? You put a little bit over here. Hey, you grease some palms with that money. Hey, you have a nice time in Vegas. You take the kids out to Disneyland. What are you going to do with that? Some things. Don't even worry about it. Hey. So, there's something there. The other thing that Trump's done, I believe I have it in here. Breaking. The U.S. House passes Bill 217190, blocking non-citizens from getting SBA loans. What are SBA loans? That's small business loans. So, what they were doing with these small business loans, and this is tied into why they're in infinity and migrants and all the rest of it into American cities and towns. Handing out these SBO loans, right? Set up your small business. How many convenience stores can you have? Well, as many as you have Indians, I guess. And this is keeping the flow of money around, right? Set up NGOs, set up departments, set up people who can finance these departments and this money. Money flows in, some of it gets rerouted and gets out to these people who build these businesses. It doesn't matter if they succeed or not, because it's just flow. It's just money flow, circulations, right? False liquidity, things on paper. GDP go up because of feminism, apparently. It's a Nazo Erudite point, destiny point. Feminism created GDP. GDP go up, good. So good, feminism good. That's nice. So that was a scheme. And as I said before, the old plan, the old scheme seems to be getting substantial rewrites. No longer the plan. It's a new plan. New sheriff in town. Look at that guy. Not the best photo. Not the best photo in this one. He's looking a little less orange. He's got to re-orange up. He's got to get the pancake on. Come on, man. So, what does this mean? It means tough times are coming. The adjustments are going to come. I thought they were going to literally happen in May, but it seems like we're going to start to see them in June and probably into July. The big question, of course, that we don't have answers to is what the one big beautiful bill will be when it finally gets passed, and what that's going to do to the markets. It's going to do something. We know that much for sure. It's either going to shoot those bond yield rates up, or maybe relax them. We've seen that happen before. Could happen again. Everyone's going to tell you, look at Wall Street. Don't worry about that. Right? We're starting to see the labor markets contract. That's always a bad sign. So it means less and less people working. Because bankruptcy rates in the United States are ticking up. Quietly behind the scenes. And remember, your cities and towns are bankrupt. So there's got to be a new way to refinance all this, which is where I think Bitcoin comes in. That's why they're making a strategic reserve. It's why they're doing a lot of those things, is to set up that parallel market. And why also gold has gone Mironchucknow. Gold prices are soaring. You know, I haven't checked on the silver prices recently, but I know there was a massive disparity between the two. Because, you know, gold is just that heavenly repository of value. We love gold! So they do. So, there are enough reasons to be concerned. Do I think we're going to live in Mad Max world of this? No. No, I don't. Do I think that people are going to get squeezed? Yes. Vulnerable people are going to get vulnerable. If you don't own anything, you'll own nothing and be happy. You probably will be, actually. You'll probably be fine. If you don't own anything, you're going to be fine. I don't know what this is going to do to average rental prices. It'll depend. Depend on the things that we're going to have to watch out for now is the trickle-out effects, right? Will insurance rates rise? Most likely. A lot of insurance is tied to the bonds. You think, well, bond rates rise up. That's good. You're getting more money out of it. But it says all those derivatives, they're going to have to be met somehow. So I would expect to see, you're going to see a lot of rising in relative rates. Healthcare, insurance, loans, all that stuff. So the general prognosis, and this is, you've heard this one before, don't be carrying debt. If you can get debt-free real soon, do that. If you're carrying bullshit debt, I'm almost going to say don't worry about it so much. I think a lot of these, payday loans and all this stuff, they might just vanish. Seriously, because they're all about leverage, right? They're just over leveraged. They're just debt market businesses. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those just gone. Stock up on the staples as much as you can. You got a chest high freezer, keep it full. Stuff like toilet paper and all that stuff, make sure you got a few months supply. Because those are the things that, as those prices tick up, it doesn't take much for people to freak out. Especially because memory of COVID is not that long ago. People remember those. People still talk about those toilet paper shortages. They laugh it off now. I remember that. It was crazy. How much is toilet paper? Are they out? What Costco's? Were they out of Costco? No. Okay. Don't do that to me. You got me. Why you do that for me? You fucking prick. No. Seriously. Think about that. Don't freak out. Still send me money. I know. But, yeah, I don't want to be this guy. I'm not going to keep doing shows every week saying, right? If I see something happen, I'll let you know. But I follow Tom Luongo and many others who are doing much more better intensive work than I am on these things. And send us, and Jason sent you, just so he knows. But yeah, things are going to get tight real fast. As I said with the Japanese thing, the reason why I share those stories in that way is how fast it's going to change. You know, from one forecast to a few months down the line, and within basically from 1 month to the next, you have a totally different reporting on the situation. And the environment and the particulars for these things have been around a lot longer than Trump and his tariffs and all that stuff. So don't listen to any of that shit. Not saying that Trump's tariffs didn't have an effect. Of course it does. Got everyone's attention, didn't it? Woohoo! Got you right by the cojones. Wait, whoa. Brought everyone to the table. Now they're negotiating. Hey, good stuff. I'm hoping and I'm praying, really, that they're negotiating some sort of safety fall for as many countries as possible. I can't guarantee that. I have no idea what the negotiations are, and we're going to find out. And honestly, it might just be to advantage Trump and his people, and well, as you will. But I would also expect to see a lot more media blow-ups, a lot more things, especially on Thursdays, right? I think Tom was saying that, like Trump likes to release something salacious on a Thursday to keep the news cycle going. So you're going to see a lot more stories like this where just distractions. What? Who? What? Elon? Who? What? Yeah. I don't think it's coincidence, by the way, that Elon and Trump split up exactly when they did. It'd be a Thursday. Maybe it was just his turn. I would expect to see maybe an Epstein reveal. I know Kash Patel was on Joe Rogan saying there's nothing there, but maybe there's something there they can do. Who knows? Whatever it's going to be something. And they're going to keep giving you these things to keep your eyes off this. Because this could incite panic. We don't want panic. So don't panic. But prepare. And if I'm wrong, which I'm not, but if I'm wrong, just say I'm wrong. What happened? You bought some more rolls of toilet paper. Boo hoo hoo. Maybe you're just putting some money away in some places, maybe some Bitcoin where that, and you're watching those housing prices. And if they dip, you buy some land. Nice. Who doesn't like a little land? But you have two big giant pillars in this post-Nuremberg regime. And it fits the narrative, doesn't it? You have Martyr Maid coming out, questioning the post-Nuremberg order. And every big payout person, all the IDWs, the Ben Shapiro's and all that stuff, they all start freaking out. Rounding up the troops. Whoa, can't look at this. Not allowed. I don't think they even understand why they're not allowed. They think just vague Jew thing. Maybe, ooh. No. They don't want you looking at any part of that. Because maybe you start looking at that, you start looking at this stuff. You start asking some questions. How is this financing anyways? And where did the British Empire really go? It was here, then it wasn't there. What? Where'd it go? Oof. What? It was like that. No, it was transferred. City of London's still there. Been around for a long time. Most likely would still be around after all this. Maybe a little restructuring. Vatican is also a nice little weird little place. Now you got an American Pope. That's interesting, isn't it? And DC is an interesting little place. So you have these little vectors in the world, these little special places that have their own rules and do their own things. I tell this to you folks because we, you and me, us, people, can do much about any of this. And that's not a case of despair. You can take it from your mind. just realize the game that was being played. The merchants were in control, or have been in control for a while. And they sold you this lie of rights and freedoms and votes and to keep you as a cog who dreams of being a citizen, who thinks they're a citizen, who defends themselves like a citizen, but really, they're treating you like a cog. And it doesn't have to be that way. And as these things start happening, and as more, violence hits the streets, and my big predictions about Age of the Vengeful Sun's here and it's catching up. We're seeing more and more of it. I see more and more of it as well. As that violence becomes more, it doesn't just stay as kinetic, it's going to get into everything. And as that starts happening, again, the temptation, I'll lead into it because it's going to feel good. But we model the prodigal son. We return, we repent, and we redeem. If you want to be righteous, you got to get righteous. And you got to choose your king now. And get with your people. So as things do tighten, you're not suffering alone. One of the big calls for this show, even back when it was a 2-bit podcast, I figured, why am I doing this? And in a weird way, it's an extension. I was a bartender and I worked in restaurants and hospitality for a long time. And I don't miss it at all. But the one thing I do miss was talking to the people, my regulars. Even when I did a brief stint here and made friends with all the tradies at the trade table. And just chat. So this is my thing. This is what I do. It's what I've always been doing. It's what I'm good at. At least I think so. It seems encouraging. People seem to like it. Leave a comment. Help the show out. Let the people know where we're at. But yeah, find your people, folks. Realize that you're not alone. I'm not alone. We're in this together. And as long as I can draw a breath, and as long as these lights stay on, as long as I can, keep doing this thing, I'll keep doing it. Anyways. Somber Saturday afternoon. My goodness, early afternoon now on the East Coast. It's 2 o'clock in the morning over where I'm at. I'm going to sign off, folks. I'll be back. Yeah, I'll be back in a few hours. Do a night show. Maybe we'll do something fun. Maybe we'll watch... I'll do a member show, maybe. I don't know. I'll do something. We'll watch something. We'll watch something fun. Okay? Maybe we'll watch... you want to watch... what do you guys want to watch? You want to watch Andrew Wilson and Jay Dyer on Piers Morgan? There's that option. We can maybe watch that Theo Vaughn and JD Vance, although I don't know. Sometimes you play these things and YouTube gets weird. We can try it out. We'll figure something out. We'll do a watch party. Me and you and the boys. So come back tonight, Saturday night. Yeah. Was it? Yeah, Saturday night. Saturday night, probably around 11 or so. I'll be over on YouTube and on X. And like I said, like, subscribe, do all the things for the show, help support any way way you can. I appreciate JLH for his $5. I don't know if anyone sent me over anything on Streamlabs. I'll check that out when I'm done. Go over to Gumroad, buy yourself a copy of Tales of the Shadow Empire. And I appreciate you all listening. If you got any questions, put in the comments section below. And I'm Jason Mironchuck. And it's later than you think.